convention this resolution was in our booklet, and I just don't remember. Did we not vote on this last year?
Excellent question. I believe it needs to be refreshed. Something. Catherine, can you tell me why we're voting on it again? Or you're muted, friend.
Sorry. I don't know. I know that I know what I do know is that Jim Hobart was the leader of this commission, and he has since left. And so it's being kind of reconstituted and reformed. It might have something to do with that. I didn't include it in the agenda, so I'm not sure. But when I saw it here, I was really glad that it was here. So just to make sure that we're maybe all on the same page. So if Steve, can I ask you to check the minutes and see if it was actually, if it was already voted on? Steve wouldn't have put it in our work for today. So I'm going to call on you, Steve, to answer that question.
I do not recall seeing it. I listened to a recording of the entire convention last year. It was on the agenda, but I don't recall. I don't have a record of it being actually voted on last year.
Okay.
Yeah, that rings a bell. Thank you.
I would have been the one to have handled it, but I was admitted to the hospital the day before, and I know we had some technical issues getting the agenda convention off the ground last year.
That's what I recall is that we didn't have a record of it having been voted on. So if it was, it didn't get recorded appropriately. So we want to make sure it's on the record. That's
correct. Thank you. That makes sense. The chair would recognize Rachel Black.
So I believe I heard that this commission would be a very active and busy group of people, starting out with staff. I assume that means from the diocesan level, perhaps also some parish staff that are that would be asked to accept assignments on this commission, but then moving into being managed more by volunteers from the parishes with less staff. And when I say staff, I mean someone who is paid either by the diocese or a parish, less staff involvement. Am I understanding the intent of this commission correctly?
as a commission of the diocese, there will always be staff involvement at some level. There will be liaisons. What's not clear at this point, since Jim left, we will have to reconstitute the people who are involved in this already. We're going to have to, devise some bylaws and all of those things. But we need to make sure that the diocese is supporting that we have a commission, and then I, along with others, will be actively involved in putting together exactly how that's going to work. But it will be people who are interested in this and wanting to serve in this way, as all of our commissions work on the diocese. It will be very similar in structure. We will just have to adapt it to, but we'll follow the way, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, thankfully. We have other commissions in the diocese, and we will follow the structure of those.
Do we feel as though this adds an additional financial burden on the diocese this year?
There's no financial impact on this resolution. There's no budgetary impact. Any staff that would be working on this are already, it would be part of their normal duties. Kathy Klein.
I'm working, so I apologize if I was distracted and missed this, but it talks about reestablishing it. So when did we last have it, and why was it decommissioned?
It never got off the ground. It was on the agenda for last year, and last year's minutes were unclear that we had voted to establish this commission. And so we are voting to be clear on that. And should the diocese decide to go forward with this, we will kind of begin again. We will begin.
So we don't really have a history of having done this. This is a relatively new thing.
This is a brand new thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Kirk.
Thank you. Kirk, St. Paul Sparks. I speak in favor for this. As I did last year. I mean, I remember a discussion last year and we had a few wording changes in the resolution even, but those passed. I just remember voting for this. And so I feel that we don't need to, because we did, but we need a record, and I understand that. And so hopefully that we'll vote in favor again, and as the diocese, to give structure to what our baptismal covenant already calls us to do. It's nice to have some structure to bring folks together who have passion about a variety of areas in which we're called to live out our faith. And so I hope we approve it again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. Sandy. Oh, Sandy, you're muted, friend. Sandy, we can't hear you. You have your computer on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, I've voted in favor of resolution number 1. And I think it's wonderful, but is it necessary, or I don't believe that people in our diocese are evil enough that we have to have a group of people to pound it into them, not to be, anyway, I just don't think the need to do this. I really feel that the people in the diocese are acceptance of everybody, and I just don't believe that we need this.
Thank you, Sandy. I would recognize the Kessners. You guys are muted. I believe. There you go.
I also agree that our baptismal covenant, when we're confirmed, if we live that, this is totally unnecessary. And I think part of this should be emphasizing that we live our baptismal covenant, not just slam people with information they may already know or may not know. But some of us that are a little older actually learned this stuff in school and believed it. And since I was 34 years old when I was baptized, I was already pretty firm in my beliefs. And even though I claimed to be agnostic for many years, I still believed in the equality of people because I actually learned it in school. And I learned it in the context of civics, and the history was not glossed over. We learned all the warts, everything else. And maybe we're not doing that anymore. So maybe there is a need for something like this, but I think the need is to emphasize that we need to live our baptismal covenant. The Holy Spirit will guide us if we do that. That's all I've got to say on it. I don't object to this resolution. I just think it's unnecessary.
Thank you, Dennis. I call upon Sarah Dunn.
Hi, friends. Reverend Sarah Dunn, Rector of St. Patrick's. I'm speaking in favor of this resolution and the need for it. Because as we heard even earlier in this meeting, that there have been siblings of ours within our church that have felt discriminated against and have experienced religious trauma on behalf of the church institutional. And therefore, I think it's extremely important that we consider and continue to listen to the Holy Spirit, and that we're called to grow. Disciple means learner, right? Disciple means someone who's committed to the work of transformation and spiritual growth. And one of the ways we do that is every year, sometimes multiple times a year, we come back to the baptismal covenant because we know we need to be reminded of it regularly. And our Advent word yesterday, for those who are like social media people or millennials like myself, our Advent word yesterday was repent. And I want to remind us that repentance is about returning to God, is about redirecting our attention. And the reality is, even though we are made in God's image and likeness, even though we are inherently good, beautiful human beings, that our broken societal systems do impact us. And they do cause us to direct our attention away from God at times. And so a commission like this is here to help remind us when we have not directed our attention towards love of God and love of neighbor, that we need to do that not just as individuals, but also as a diocese. It takes the work of a ton of people for us to begin to tackle some of the injustices in our midst. So y'all, let's not be scared to admit that we have growth still to do as individuals and as a community.
Thank you, Sarah. Chair will call upon Veronica.
Hi, good morning. So I want to address I don't think we're evil. So my name is Veronica Gallus. I'm a deacon at St. Peter's Episcopal Church. I would speak to the fact that we're not evil, but we're human. And I had an experience at St. Peter's when we had a same-sex marriage on a Sunday morning. And during the coffee hour after this same-sex marriage, a human member of our congregation sitting next to me, who is an LGBTQ person, said, sure, I'm okay that, people are gay, but don't shove it down my throat on a Sunday morning. And I had a choice to make that morning as an LGBTQ person. I could have responded in anger. I could have walked out of the church knowing, but instead I engaged that person and said, tell me why you think that. Tell me what that's about. And I just want to know, part of this commission will let someone like me know that it's not just my responsibility as an LGBTQ person to engage us in conversations around change and around where our belief systems don't correspond with our actual actions or how we speak to one another. And so by adopting this resolution, those of us that are LGBTQ in your community and those of us that are Black and Hispanic in our community know that it's not just our responsibility to help in the transformation and the conversion, but it is those of you that are not Hispanic, not Black, not of a racial mix or an LGBTQ, that you find it your responsibility as well to help transform us.
Thank you, Veronica. Melvin Stringer.
Good morning, everyone. Melvin Stringer from the Vestry of St. Timothy's and also the Standing Committee. One of the things that, we have to sometimes remember is that things that are not put out in front and not talked about are easily forgotten. And in this changing world, it isn't about forcing something down anyone's throat or into their mind. because we all have choices that we can make. We can listen, we can ignore, or we can work together in love. And this is about love. And it is about saying that it's not just about race or gender. It is about reminding people someone is evil. It is just that this commission will be able to keep us up to date and to know what is happening. And if you have to have a resource, that you're able to go someplace and get good, clear information rather than speculation or differences that someone has come up with that may not have a foundation. So I support this resolution.
Thank you, Melvin. I'll recognize Tia Middlestat.
Actually, I was just trying to clap and I raised my hand, sorry.
No problem. I got you, girl. So we have Wendy, I believe your name is? Yeah, Wendy.
I concur. I support this resolution. I concur with what Melvin had to say most wholeheartedly. And for Dennis, I appreciate what he had to say in terms of the way he was educated and how he always felt a sense of equality amongst all people. Unfortunately, that's not the case with everyone. And even in our, in our community here, we'd like to think that's the case, but it's not always. And there's things that happen as a larger society that I think something like this would allow us as a church to be involved in. In terms of education and what people have been taught, I'll go back to a most recent example. We're doing a series answering the questions or asking the questions. And so we're listening at the videos after at 9:15 at Christ Church. And one of the videos from a man about probably my age, Dennis's age, talked about growing up, and we have parishioners from all over the country, growing up and being taught in Sunday school the inferiority of Black people and how white men had to rise up to protect and serve white women, etc. And this was being taught in Sunday school for someone that is basically in my generation. So things happen, it's out there. It's something that we need to recognize. And I don't think that this resolution is something that we can ignore in terms of having the ability for us to take note of the importance of things in our community, in our society, and help in a manner of love and justice address those things. So I'm supportive of this resolution. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Wendy. Dennis and Kathy.
As I said before, I don't oppose this resolution. And, we need to be confrontational, and anybody that knows me knows I'm not afraid to be confrontational.
Yes, yes.
If I get a lot of comments, especially toward the Hispanic congregants, they don't belong here. Well, my point, I will go up and ask them immediately, tell me exactly where they belong then. You know what? They can't find an answer. And just because, I'm white and, I look like all other white people. My father died before I was born, and he came from a Jewish tradition. So when I was 4 and 5 years old, we lived in a predominantly old country immigrant area. And as we know, anti-Semitism has been around for a long, long time. And in Europe, it's still strong, and it was strong back when I was born in the World War II. And I can remember neighbors yelling at me, calling me a kike bastard. because I didn't have a father there. They just assumed that my mother was unwed and that I was Jewish. Now, I was never raised in the Jewish tradition because my mother married a Jewish man, but she was a Christian. So when he passed, I was sent to a Baptist church. And as I say sent, I was never taken. But I do remember that, and I remember it hurting when I was a kid, and I think that's what helps me become confrontational now, is anybody speaking against anybody else because of who they are, I'm going to confront them. And that's what we all need to do. We don't have to be overpowering, and threatening in any way. Just ask them a logical question. Where do they belong? If they don't belong here, where do they belong? How can you tell me who God says this person is to love? We're, like I said, I won't oppose the resolution. I just think we need to emphasize in ourselves that we need to be a little confrontational to end this kind of discrimination that you're talking about in this resolution. So that's it.
Thank you, Dennis. Thomas Blake.
Thomas Blake, St. Catherine of Siena. I move the previous question.
Don't think we can quite do it that way. You can move to end discussion and vote immediately.
Okay, I so move. Yes.
Moving the previous question means the exact same thing as end discussion and vote immediately.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Give me a moment to make a poll for that.
So now, Maggie, the people are voting to close discussion on this issue.
Correct. So to emphasize what Connie has just stated, we are voting to end discussion. We are not voting on the resolution yet. We'll do that next. We're talking about ending discussion and moving to a vote, okay? And when Elizabeth is ready, you'll have a vote on your screen to end discussion. Okay, the vote should be on your screen now. You can vote at this time. Elizabeth, can you report?
We have sufficient votes to end discussion and immediately vote on the resolution.
Thank you. So we will move immediately to a vote on the resolution. In a moment, you will have a poll on your screen to vote in favor or against the resolution we have been discussing about the Social Justice Commission. Elizabeth, can you announce the results of the vote?
Oh, I forgot to unmute. We have 97 in favor and 12 opposed.
So the resolution is adopted. Thank you. The next item on our agenda. I lost my script here.
Maggie,
Yes.
I've had my hand up there, but I think I might have hit the wrong button earlier. But I just, before we move on, if I could have the privilege of just saying a thank you to the House for taking time for this conversation, for the candor that people have offered, and for the caring spirit that's gone with it. So thank you all for this last discussion and for being both aware of and considerate of one another in differing opinions. So thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. Okay. The next item of business, the next agenda item is the annual bishop's report to the diocese at the request of Bishop Jim. I now call upon Canon Catherine to read the report.
Maggie, on the agenda, excuse me, is nominations for board, I believe.
No, oh yeah, nominations for boards are next. You're correct, Connie.
Yes.
That's not on my script. Okay.
Never mind. Yeah. I'm on the same script you're on, Maggie, so we can pause and do this first.
Let me see if I can find where that happens. Okay, nomination for the floor to the nominations from the floor for those boards which a canon directs elections at convention. As described in the agenda booklet, there are 3 boards for which elections may be held this year: the Board of Trustees to Camp Galilee, the Cathedral Chapter, and the Disciplinary Board of the Diocese. We will now be holding election. We will not be holding elections for these latter 2 boards at this convention for reasons stated in the agenda booklet on pages 14 and 15, so you can read that at your leisure. If anyone wishes to nominate someone for the one open position for the election of the Board of Trustees of Camp Galilee, please raise your hand on Zoom. The diocese has traditionally allowed candidates to be nominated from the floor at convention. The candidates may nominate themselves. Please note that any candidate who is nominated must accept the nomination in writing by typing "I accept this nomination," okay? In the chat box, and this goes for candidates nominating themselves as well, because we need to record it in the minutes. Okay, so are there any nominations for the Board of Trustees of Camp Galilee at this time? Again, if you want to nominate somebody, you need to raise your hand using the Zoom function. Margaret Bozek.
I believe there is a nomination of Ken Rackley. Did I not see that in the booklet?
That is in the booklet, yes.
Are we just asking for additional nominations now? Or?
I believe.
Yes, that's correct, Mark. Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So Ken has already been nominated and accepted that nomination. So if there are any other nominations, there's only one opening, I believe, one position up for election. Okay. Seeing none. Okay, so Connie, Madam Parliamentarian.
Yes, yes. Then the nominations are closed then.
So without objection, we can close the nominations. Is that, can I do it that way? Okay.
And move on to the next item on the agenda.
Okay, the next item on the agenda would be what I previously stated, the bishop's report. And at the request of Bishop Jim, I now call on Canon Catherine to read the report.
Thank you. Well, again, a welcome to you all, and thank you for attending this diocesan convention this morning. It's good to see you here. The canons of our church require that the bishop issue an annual address or support, and at the request of Bishop Jim and on his behalf, I offer you that report. This past year has been one of many changes in our families, our parishes, and the Episcopal Church everywhere. And that's, of course, been equally true for the Diocese of Nevada. 2021 saw a number of transitions among the clergy in our diocese. We welcomed a new priest into our diocese, the Reverend Julie Weiss, who is now serving as priest in charge at St. Paul's in Elko. In addition, we ordained 4 new deacons to the diaconate. On June 27th, Sandy Beatty was ordained a deacon at All Saints. And on September 11th at Epiphany, the Right Reverend Catherine Jeffrett Shiori, to whom we all offer our gratitude for her services to the diocese, especially in these last few months, presided as 3 members of our diocese were ordained to the transitional diaconate: Carolyn Mastretti of St. George's in Austin, Jerry Jones of Christ Church in Las Vegas, and Peter Steinbrenner of Epiphany in Las Vegas. A few priests relocated in 2021. Some resigned, some retired. In January, the Reverend Michael Ingfer resigned as rector of All Saints Las Vegas and is now attending St. Christopher's in Boulder City. Accordingly, the Reverend Rafael Pereira was named priest in charge under special circumstances at All Saints for 2021. In February, the Reverend Marla Asen resigned as rector of St. Paul's in Elko to move to Reno for work. A few months later, as mentioned earlier, St. Paul's welcomed Julie Weiss to be its new priest in charge, and Marla now assists as St. Catherine's of Siena in Reno and other places where there is a need, and she so graciously fills in. In April, the Reverend Carol Walton retired as priest in charge at St. Timothy's in Henderson. A few months later, St. Timothy's chose the Reverend Chris Schuler, formerly of Epiphany, to be its new priest in charge effective 1 Advent. Carol has moved to Texas. Also in April, the Reverend Shannon Leach retired as rector at Grace in the Desert in Las Vegas. Grace has now selected the Reverend John of Gavi as his interim rector. Shannon and Joanne Leach have moved to Arizona. In May, Reverend Barry Vaughn resigned as rector at Christ Church in Las Vegas. Christ Church has selected the Reverend Liz Zivanoff as her interim rector. Later this month, the Reverend Christy Levitt will retire as priest in charge of St. Matthew's, San Mateo in Las Vegas. The Reverend Lionel Starks will continue his service to the parish as priest in charge for the foreseeable future. The Reverend Jim Wallace, a longtime friend and faithful servant at Grace in the Desert in Las Vegas, has retired and moved to California. The Reverend John Schoaf, who moved from New Zealand to the Truckee Meadows area a couple of years ago, is returning to New Zealand shortly. The Reverend Deacon James Hobart, who was actually priested last year, has moved to Kentucky and is in process of obtaining letters demissory accordingly. Sadly, many clergy associated with the diocese have passed away since last year's convention. We specifically remember the Reverend Gary Adams, Reverend Deacon Betty Bianchi, Reverend Kent Buck Belmore, Reverend Deacon Virginia Ferguson, Reverend James Kelly of St. Patrick's Incline Village, who just died last night, Reverend Sandra McCarroll, Reverend Stephen Muse, Reverend Martha Murphy, Reverend Shirley Putz, Reverend Estelle Shanks, Reverend Rick Smallwood, and Reverend Dick Snyder. We've lost a lot this year. The staff of the diocesan office continues to serve you. I'm serving as canon to the ordinary and chief of staff. The Reverend Canon Hilario Cisneros is our canon for Spanish-speaking ministries. Don Barsky continues as our finance officer, and Steve Sims as the diocesan administrator and communications officer. Retiring from the staff in April 2021 and sorely missed is Dick Stuffelbeam, our treasurer, who resigned for health reasons. But we were able to add Ken Rackley, who is our coordinator for diocesan youth ministries. It's now my duty and honor to announce our officers of convention. our parliamentarian, Connie Skidmore from St. Patrick's in Incline Village, and our secretary, the Reverend Elizabeth Tattersall of Coventry Cross in Minden. And thank you, Steve Sims, for assisting in this, the management of this convention as well. The bishop also appoints at this time for next year's diocesan, to continue into next year as diocesan chancellor, Kathleen Bliss of Christ Church, Las Vegas. Thank you, Kathleen, for all of your service and help to us. And finally, the bishop wishes to announce the appointment of the Reverend Marla Asen, St. Catherine of Siena in Reno, as the new chair of our COOL, the Diocesan Commission on Ordination and Licensing. It was effective November 18th, 2021. As per the canons, each mission district in the fall of 2021 held elections for representatives to standing committee. For 2021 standing committee, whose term will begin at the adjournment of today's convention, these were the results of those elections. The Northwest Mission District elected the Very Reverend Jeff Paul of St. Peter's in Carson City, for whom this will be his first 2-year term. Is that correctly stated? Okay, just wanting to make sure we're using the right language there. The Central Mission District elected Patricia Avery, St. Hugh of Lincoln and Silver Springs, for whom this will be her first term. The Frontier Mission District elected the Reverend Tina Snyder from St. Mark's and Tonopah, for whom this will be her first term. The Southeast Mission District re-elected Melvin Stringer from St. Timothy's in Henderson. This will be his first full term. He had been elected the prior year to serve the unexpired term of Georgia Winsell. And the Southwest Mission District re-elected the Reverend John McClatchy. This will be his second term. Returning standing committee members include Maggie Davidson from the Southwest Mission District, AJ Flint from St. Bart's in Ely, he's in his first term, Reverend Rosemary Jo Canale, the Central Mission District, her first term, Reverend Antonio Lopez, the Southeast Mission District, his first term, and Tia Middlestat, St. Paul's and Sparks, the Mission District, in her second 2-year term. The bishop will, in a moment, conduct a brief ceremony to install these 10 members to the of the diocese to the standing committee. And finally, at this time, as required in Canon 2, Section 5, and noted on page 12 of the agenda booklet, the bishop today reappoints Phil Richter to the Galilee Board of Trustees and approved the Galilee Board's appointment of Amanda Hilton and Kristen McAtheny, forgive me, Kristen, if I mispronounced your name, to the board. And Bishop Jim, I call on you now for any additional comments you'd like to make.
I don't think I'm on mute. You can hear me now?
We hear you, but we can't see you.
Yeah. And the first comment is I would like to say thank you to Canon Catherine for presenting the bishop's report so well, and for all that you do, and to say I thank you to all the staff for the ministry that goes on day by day, known and unknown, throughout the diocese. And so thank you very much. It continues to be a privilege and a gift to be able to work with you, to work with the diocese, and all as we go through this time of transition. So thank you for presenting it so well. And if there are any other appointments I need to make, you can name them if you would, and I will thank you for that, and thank you for those who stand to serve the diocese in the range and capacities of gifts and leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. Maggie, I see a hand for Cynthia Lewis.
Cynthia Lewis, what do you have to share with us?
Hi, for the purpose of the minutes, I would just like to have included that myself, Cynthia, the Reverend Cynthia Lewis, became the official priest in charge at St. Christopher's in Boulder City, and letters de missouri were accepted into the Diocese of Nevada.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Forgive me. We did not include that. So thank you. Now it can be included in the minutes.
And one more thank you.
Been around so long, it didn't seem unusual.
Thank you. All right. I will now introduce Stuart Campbell, the Executive Director of the Galilee Episcopal Camp and Retreat Center, for his report.
Stuart, do you need the ability to share screen?
No, I don't, Elizabeth.
Okay.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to tell a story. I was just a little blindsided by hearing about the death of Jim Kelly. I was reminded, and I often would tease Jim about this when I would see him, that my first day on the job, Peg McCall was taking me around and introducing me to people in the Reno area, and the standing committee and Jim, as the acting head of the diocese at that point, were meeting at St. Paul's. So Peg said, well, we'll take you down and you can meet everyone and introduce yourself and so on. And we were waiting outside in the lobby at St. Paul's, and Jim came out and handed me a list of questions for my interview that would start in a few minutes in front of the standing committee. So that was a surprise, and I guess I did okay because I'm still around after 14 years or so. So anyway, I wanted to share what a year it's been. Certainly some ups and downs and so on. I sit here today in the beautiful St. John's Church, and I know many of you have been here before, but I hope those who have not experienced Galilee and the beauty of the church here will be able to visit sometime this year. And boy, I'm looking forward to being able to gather together next October because I really miss seeing all of you in person. One thing I did want to bring up before getting into the main body of my talk is we don't have a group currently scheduled here at Galilee for the convention weekend time. And so we would love to keep that empty for hosting parts of the convention here. But one thing I really wanted to mention is we would love to be able to house people who are coming to convention. I'm sure Maggie and others will talk about this a bit more at the end of today, but convention will be at State Line, Nevada, just down the road from us. And what better way to spend convention than staying at Galilee and enjoying some of our meals here at the camp. So in order to ensure that we can make this work, if you have interest in staying here at the camp for convention next year, please let myself or Steve know that you have interest, and we will make it happen. So we will certainly have certain aspects of the convention here because we will be helping to host, including the reception gathering on Thursday evening to start the convention. So look forward to that. Friends, this has not been an easy year. Between working and living through another year of COVID, dealing with the effects of frightening wildfires in the West, losing good friends and family members to illness, we have all had our share of difficulties. And yet, as they so often do during storms at Lake Tahoe, gleams of sunlight have broken through, and we need to celebrate and recognize the successes we have had. Galilee had a successful summer camping season. Our groups are returning after a year of uncertainty. Our core staff is still here and doing good work. And the generosity of many of you have kept us afloat during a time of severely depressed revenue. Overall, Galilee is in good shape, and we look forward to better years to come. I want to thank our board members, advisory council members, our donors, and our volunteers who have supported Galilee through thick and thin over the last few years. There are simply too many people to name here, but I did want to mention a few people who are leaving the board. Thank you to Scott Luttinger and Jim Kern, both of Epiphany Episcopal. And a special thank you to Beth Osborne of St. Catherine's of Siena, who is leaving the board after serving 3 full terms and 9 full years, several years as the board president. Thank you, Scott, Jim, and Beth. You've made a huge contribution to the success of Galilee, and we appreciate your years of service. With great affection, I also wanted to thank our core staff who have kept the camp running during a year of difficulty. Assistant Director Greg Clenzy and Food Service Director Eva Clenzy have both been here at the camp for 6 years now. And Head Chef Chadwick Clark has been here over 8 years. There's no way that Galilee would have survived and in some small ways thrived during this time without their dedicated work. It is a pleasure to work with them. Next time you're at Galilee, please stop by the dining hall and thank them for their service. And you can even pick up a copy of the long-awaited Galilee Cookbook, which is right here. This book has actually been in process for almost a decade now. So it took a pandemic for us to finally finish it. If you have interest in a copy, let me know and we'll figure out a way to get it to you. We had a truncated but very successful summer camping program. Our staff and counselors were fully vaccinated and the campers were tested before arrival, and many of our older campers were vaccinated as well. Our precautions of using cohorts and requiring testing worked well, as not a single case of COVID came from exposure at Galilee. Even with our reduced numbers and weeks, we did provide funding for over 20 campers from the Dei Bezzati Campership Fund. I try at times to recognize a specific donor to highlight the importance of donor support, especially to our Galilee programs. Jan and Dick French of St. Peter's have made a major gift to the Campership Fund to support the youth who attend our camping program. I want to offer a challenge to this convention to match Jan and Dick's gift of close to $7,000 to the fund and provide double the funding for our summer campers in 2022. This total would fully fund nearly 20 campers next summer. Typically, we support over 80 campers each summer, so this would be a great start for us. Please visit the Galilee website for additional information on how to make your gift. And thank you for supporting all the youth that come to Galilee. And thank you to Jan and Dick for their generous gift to the youth of our diocese and communities. Let's try and match their gift. Our program last summer of family camps and youth weeks ended on August 6th, when smoke from the Dixie Fire finally rolled into the Tahoe Basin. And then the Caldor Fire started on August 14th, and life got interesting. Over the 14 years I've worked at Galilee, my family and I have driven down the Highway 50 corridor to the Bay Area countless times. It's a beautiful drive with thick forests lining the roadway, and I've often wondered what would happen if a fire started down canyon and spread towards Tahoe. And now we know. A quick moving disaster that burned through small communities along the highway, destroyed thousands of acres of forest, traveled into the basin, and threatened South Lake Tahoe. It was only with the hard work of thousands of firefighters, some luck of the wind, and the extensive thinning and fuels reduction from the last decade that saved entire neighborhoods in the basin. We never had to evacuate from Galilee, but we were prepared to leave at any time with office materials, the essential furniture and elements from St. John's, a piano, no less, and our personal possessions. Although many families lost their homes along Highway 50, our local community was spared. Galilee was closed for a month, and we had to cancel the 100th birthday celebration yet again. It's been a season of many disappointments, but we are so grateful that Tahoe was mostly spared. The destruction could have been worse. With a second round of cancellations, we have had to celebrate Galilee's birthday in small ways throughout the year, as each time our plans to gather as a community in great numbers have been thwarted. In 2020, it was COVID. This year, it was the Caldor fire. What kind of message should we take from this? I think America is, in some ways, is all about the spectacle, the big event, the grand gathering of people in a single place to remember, honor a moment in time, or simply party. COVID has taken this away from us, and in many ways, we have not responded very well. One thing I have learned this year is to recognize the importance of the small events, the small act of kindness that have moved and inspire us during a time of great challenge. We've all heard these stories during the last 18 months. Italian opera singers sharing arias from their rooftop porches, a delivery man going the extra mile to bring dinner to a hungry senior, an entire neighborhood throwing a thank you block party for the local UPS driver. These are the stories that have meant the world to us during this time. As we canceled another pair of Galilee 100th birthday celebrations, I was both saddened, but also recognized that day to day, Galilee touches people's lives in countless small ways, and this is what is important. It is, in fact, why we would gather together to celebrate in the first place. With that being said, we will be gathering in the spring to celebrate Galilee, less so about the 102 years of operation and more about looking to the future. The date to gather at Galilee is May 29th, the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, and then June 4th, the following weekend in Las Vegas at Epiphany Episcopal Church. The registrations for these celebrations will be open in January. Please sign up for our e-news or be checking the website for more information. So now some fun stuff. We have a great deal of Galilee swag accumulated that we'd like to unload before the end of the year. If you're looking for Christmas presents, we have you covered. Hats, Galilee buttons, vests, all kinds of things. And of course, the Galilee cookbook, as I mentioned. Order today. Oh, you can actually go online on our website, and there's a link there to our Galilee Camp Shop. And we will send you presents before Christmas or to any address that you indicate. Order today, and they'll be delivered in time. Also, please sign up for our e-news, which is the best way to hear about all of the great things happening at Galilee. And you can also do this on our website at galileetahoe.org. And for those who live close, we are offering a holiday luncheon tomorrow, December 12th. There is a storm coming in, but we will still be open for business for those intrepid travelers that want to make the trek. We will also be open for pickups over the next few weeks during the holidays if you want to choose a nice day for a drive to the lake and a walkthrough of our camp shop. Just call Galilee or send an email and we will coordinate a time for you to stop by. A few noteworthy projects from this year. At the last two conventions, I believe, I've been talking about our fire service line that was to be completed to provide adequate fire flow on the property. And in the nick of time, this project was completed before the storm started to roll in October and November. It is called the Paul Norris Fire Service Line in honor of Paul Norris, as the funding came from the Norris Rocaberti Family Foundation. And the family foundation, Norris Rocaberti family, is involved at Galilee as campers and donors. Also, one last thing, as many of you know, the Derby Talbot Lodge is complete, but we are still offering engraved pavers at the patio area outside the lodge through early May. If you have an interest in sponsoring a paver and having it engraved with friends or family, please let me know, as we will be still taking donations through the winter. Summer registration for 2022 opened up on November 8th, and some sessions are filling rapidly. In fact, some sessions are full for certain genders. It is important for us to accommodate as many youth from our diocese as possible, so please encourage people in your parishes to sign up immediately. If they are not able to get into sessions, please have them email me, and we hope to figure something out. We have certainly set aside space for people from the South, as they have not been able to sign up just yet. So there is room. Please call me or email me, and we will get the kids and families into the sessions. And also, there's still room in July over our July 4th family camp weekend. And we will open up another weekend in August for families in the coming weeks. And we hope you can join us at some point this summer, if not for the celebration in May. Over the last 18 months, I've been doing some reflection about our world, as I imagine many of us have. And I've been thinking more and more about the Galilee slogan, all are welcome. What does it mean to welcome everyone in equal participation with the rest of the Galilee community? How do we do this to those groups who have not been part of the Galilee experience in the past? How do we welcome those coming from marginalized groups of people who may make others uncomfortable? We do aim to be a place for everyone. How do we do this in an increasingly discordant world? It seems to me that we simply embrace everyone who comes our way and love each and every person that visits Galilee. Living out the meaning of all are welcome is quite simply, really. In fact, our guidebook is laced throughout the Bible. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. Inviting the stranger can be scary, but is the essence of our faith. This work can make people uncomfortable, and we may leave some people behind for a time, but we must do it, and we hope that people will catch up at some point in the future. Within the world of camping, we talk a lot about radical hospitality. Our hospitality is radical for the groups who attend as we strive to provide excellent food service in a beautiful place, coupled with an embrace, sometimes figurative, but at times very real, of each individual person. Our intention is to develop a relationship with everyone who comes to Galilee, but this only works for those people who are already in relationship with Galilee or with the groups that attend. What about those who are not currently using the camp? What about the marginalized people who do not feel welcome at Galilee simply because we have not actively welcomed them? The staff and I have been talking about ways to reach out to these folks. One example of our success is our assistant director, Greg Clenzy, has developed a connection with a group of African-American female yoga instructors and practitioners from the Oakland area, and they are now coming on retreat every June. This community has experienced significant loss during the pandemic, and this retreat has become a lifeline for them during a challenging time. We are looking to increase our offerings to other people coming from underrepresented groups, including our Native American friends. And finally, we are looking forward to welcoming back to Galilee in 2022 our friends from the Latino congregations in Las Vegas, as they were not able to participate this past summer due to the pandemic. With these sentiments in mind, it is important to recognize that I speak to you from the ancestral homeland of the Washoe tribe. Land acknowledgements are important, but let us all consider ways that we can expand our friendship and support for those who lived here before us. As we consider a world that is becoming less kind and accepting those different from us, let us all reflect on ways that we can welcome the stranger in our midst and strive to live out the radical hospitality of Jesus Christ. Life is short, and we have too little time to gladden the hearts of those who traveled away with us, or to get to know those who traveled different paths than we do. So be swift to love and make haste to be kind, and may the blessing of God Almighty, Son, and Holy Spirit be with you now and always. Amen, and thank you. If you have any questions now, please raise your hand and I can answer them, hopefully. Dennis.
Well, I'll put in a plug for Stuart here while everybody's listening. I've been a member of St. John's for 35 years, maybe a little bit more. And I've seen relations with the camp, good and very bad. In these last 14 years, Stuart has not only been an outstanding executive director and done great things with the camp, and I've been on the board of trustees for quite a while, so I see that firsthand. But he's also become a valued parishioner at St. John's, and we enjoy seeing him, at church with us. He has jumped into the tech role on our Zoom broadcasts when it's necessary. And Stuart's just an all-around great guy to get along with, and he's very helpful for St. John's. Something in the plumbing goes out, and Stuart and staff are right on it. So I don't know that everybody realizes what a diamond we have here, but Stuart does an outstanding job.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I really appreciate that. Sandy.
Do you have plans to reopen the women's retreat?
Yes, we're working on plans for that currently. Let me actually bring up, it's a good question, Sandy. I believe we've talked about this, and I wonder if it's actually on our calendar now. Yes, good. It's Labor Day weekend, as it has been in the past. So Friday, September 2nd through Monday, September 5th is the women's retreat for next year. So again, very similar to what we've done in the past, 3 nights. So that allows women coming from Las Vegas to have 2 full days here, Saturday and Sunday. And I'm sure we will be running the van from Las Vegas for if we have enough interest, which we typically do. So
Thank
good
you.
question.
Thank you.
Well, thanks very much. It's been a joyful adventure for these 14 years, and I look forward to another 14.
Please, yes, please. Oh man, thank you, Stuart. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We have now been holding our convention for just about 2 hours. So let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Run to the restroom, grab a drink, whatever you need, and we will reconvene at 10:16. Alrighty. Okay, friends. Welcome back. Thank you for your patience with me. I have a lot of things on my hands right now. So, okay. Let's see. Where I got myself lost here. Okay. So I believe the next item on our agenda is me giving a brief report. Yeah, I think it is.
Installation of standing committee is next on the agenda.
So the way I have the script is just the opposite. So I'll do my report and then
That's
do
fine.
the installation. So I think it actually has a little better flow if everyone's okay with doing it that way. Especially since my report is going to be approximately 30 seconds long, give or take. I really have been thinking a lot about what I would want to say to you all about what's been happening in the standing committee over the last year. And I realized that we have such incredible leadership throughout the diocese that all the other reports are going to pretty much cover anything I would want to say. I will just recognize the wonderful leadership of Ken and Catherine, of Bishop Jim. And I just wanted to applaud the standing committee members for getting through another really difficult year, especially the ones who have made it with me through 2020 and 2021. It's been a rough couple of years. There's been a lot we've been trying to manage. I know she's not on this meeting right now, but Kathleen Bliss has been an absolute godsend this year, especially in regards to what the standing committee has been addressing with COVID and trying to come up with regulations for all of you as we try to live into this new reality that we have. So I just want to recognize her. She's phenomenal. As you all know, we've moved into a new our COVID restrictions. Essentially, we've passed the buck to all of you, trying to help support you as you make the best decisions for your communities and for your parishes. And so the standing committee hopes that we can continue to be there for you over the next however long this goes. I had a moment a few weeks ago where I texted my husband. I said, "This is never going to end, is it?" And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is what it is. It's our new life. So standing committee has also done, as you know, a lot of work and has been supporting our wonderful search committee and our transition committee. And I wanted to recognize the leadership of Fess and Patricia Say, because they have been phenomenal chair people of these two committees that yielded the incredible result of us electing Elizabeth Gardner to be our next bishop. Having worked with her already over the last few weeks, she is phenomenal, and we are so blessed, and I cannot wait to get to know her better and for her to join us. But really, it is the work of the search committee and the transition committee that has made that possible. And lastly, I just really wanted to recognize the standing committee, especially the 3 members who are rotating off the board today. Sandy has been a member of the standing committee as long as I have, and she's wonderful, and she's always bringing a fun perspective and giving us an idea of what it's like to live in the rurals, and always a strong advocate for the Western Missionary Museum, because obviously that is where she attends church. Sandy, you've been wonderful. Red Sims, I stepped up in a time when we needed him, and he has been a wise and patient presence over the last year, and I just want to thank him for that. And of course, Sarah Dunn, my dear friend, who I jokingly call my majority whip on the standing committee. Always coming in, speaking truth with love, speaking truth to power, and being an incredible friend. So, and of course, the other standing committee members who are staying on and continuing on this wonderful journey with us. And for the new people, I'm so excited to get to know you and get to work with you as we try to face some of the ongoing challenges we have to face this year, including the budget, which we will talk about later. So that is my report. Thank you guys so much for listening to me. So now we will move on to, I'll call on Bishop Jim to formally install the 2021-2022 standing committee. Jim, are you with us? We cannot see you or hear you if you are.
Maggie, I could only hear part of what you were saying. I'm sorry, it didn't all come through.
No worries, Bishop. We are now moving on to the part of the agenda where you install the 2021/2022 standing committee.
All right. Are they ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Okay. As they are ready. Okay. Maggie, I'm not able to pull it up on my screen right now. Can Steve provide that for us? Can he?
Steve, my dear friend, I don't have it either. I think you do.
It's not, for some reason, it's not coming up on my screen. I had it, but it's hanging for something's not.
I don't have it.
Was that Steve?
Yeah, I think
Yes, Bishop Jim, I'm afraid I don't have the wording for the installation.
Okay, well, I can hereby install. I can do that, and then we can follow up with the other later, but it's not coming up on my screen either.
Do you have a paper copy of the Book of Occasional Services?
As a matter of fact, I don't have one here with me right
Okay.
now. It's in my travel bag that where I keep it, and I don't have that at hand.
I'm pulling it up. Would you like me to read some of it?
Please do, yes, because I don't have access to it right now here.
Elizabeth, can you just screen share it maybe? Would that work?
Well, I don't think it'll work. It's paper. It's not available in electronic form.
Maggie, Sarah just put the link in the chat.
Thank you, Sarah.
Maybe there is one. I didn't.
This is why I
think
call
there
her
was.
my majority whip. This is why. Because of this clutch move like this. Okay. Sorry, my computer's real slow, but it is pulling up. We'll load it up here. Okay. Let's see. I'm looking for what page is it on?
The Warden's and Vestry version could be adapted, page 182.
Yes, Apollo. Yes, we know.
Or page 193, officers of church organizations could be adapted. or other lay ministries on the next page.
Yeah, I have different page numbers. Shoot.
Well, it may be a different edition than I have.
Yeah.
Well, if
Do
somebody
you
could,
want me to just read the prayers
yes,
and
if you would please do that, and I will put a seal on it at the end. How's that?
That works. Let's do that.
I present to you these persons to be admitted to the ministry of members of standing committee in this diocese. The Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity. I am your servant. Grant me understanding, that I may know your decrees. Let us pray. O eternal God, the foundation of all wisdom and the source of all courage, enlighten with your grace the members and officers of the standing committee of this diocese, and so rule their minds and guide their counsels, that in all things they may seek your glory and promote the mission of your church. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
And I can add to that, in the name of God and of this diocese, I hereby install these persons to the ministry to which they've been called, and hold them in our prayers with thanksgiving for the gifts that they bring. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for the teamwork on that one. We got there. We got there in the end. Thank you so much. Next, I will call upon Bishop, or not Bishop, I will call upon Deacon Ken Rackley to give us a report on his new position as a coordinator to diocesan youth ministries. Okay.
Thank you, Maggie. And yes, it's not Bishop.
I know, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I got like 4 hours of sleep last night. Give me a break.
That's okay. Dan once said that he thinks the triangle should be inverted and the deacons should be at the top anyways. So maybe that's what you're pulling from. Thank you very much. I am very glad to be able to be the coordinator for Diocesan Youth Ministries. What I'm going to be doing is a lot shorter than our 30 seconds that Maggie just did. We're going to be pulling some stuff together, and us as the diocese want to know how we can support you in your parishes with your diocesan youth. And it's even been brought to my knowledge that we may look a little younger than high school, junior high, but we're looking at putting together some diocesan youth weekends. One of the first things that we're going to do, though, is in March, right after the installation of our new bishop at Galilee, we're going to have a WIN weekend. And WIN stands for What I Need. I will be reaching out to parishes and inviting youth leaders and your church school leaders to come up at Galilee for that weekend of the 11th, 12th, and 13th in March. And we will sit all together and fellowship and break bread and be able to support each other and figure out where we need to go from here. Where is God asking us to do? So that is coming up on the horizon. And one last thing is, Stuart, we want to do youth stuff during convention at Galilee. So I'll put my 2 cents in very quickly for that. So we'll be looking at that as well. I am just putting right now.
You muted yourself.
Yeah. Yes, when I hit return, it's lovely how the computer works or doesn't work. All right, so I muted myself. I put in the chat my email, which is cdym@episcopalnevada.org. I am also going to do this very scary thing, although it's readily available. There is my phone number as well. please, I'm going to continue to reach out to parishes, and please reach out to me and let's get some stuff going for our youth that are very important in our diocese. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Very much appreciate that. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the, it says I would like to share my screen, but Steve, I am gonna call upon you to share your screen to help us out with.
No, I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, great. That sounds great. Whoever can do it. The necrology, to share those people in our diocese who have passed away over the last 12 months. Am I reading them? Okay. Gary Adams, St. John's in the Wilderness, Patty Allen, Barbara Jean, Lavinia.
Wait, so we're not using,
Okay, no, let's use this screen. Yeah. It looks different than
it'll
Elizabeth,
scroll through.
you've started the slideshow from present slide, not from the beginning. You're on slide 2.
Yes, because I stopped the slideshow because I was confused by the talking. I thought we were doing this in silence.
We'll do it in silence. That's fine.
Start at the beginning. Let's try it a third time.
Thank you all for sharing that, and for taking a moment of silence for those we've lost this year. At this time, I'm going to call upon Don Barsky. He's the finance officer of the diocese to give the annual treasurer's report. It's a reporting to the diocese of the financial health of the diocese as of October 31st and the actions taken in fiscal year 2021. This is not a discussion of next year's budget. That will come later. This is a discussion of how the finances went in the past year.
Good morning, everyone. First, I want to comment, I'm not the treasurer because we are looking for a treasurer, and I hope someone will come up and say, I'd like to be your treasurer. But I'm happy to give this report. It's a good report. Our asking revenue through October 31st was less than the previous year by $18,000. This was only a drop of about 4%. Considering all the effects of the pandemic, this was a very low decrease. However, the asking revenue was under budget by $31,000 or 6.4%. Fortunately, our expenses were down by $54,000 compared to 2020. and 103,000 less than what was budgeted. So our expenses were very much lower than anticipated. There were several extraordinary events that made 2021 a very successful financial year. We had a PPP loan forgiven for $75,000. We received a grant from the National Church of $40,000. We sold land in Wells for $36,000. And we had budgeted income from our Fidelity investments at $38,000, but actually gained $61,000. So we had a net increase in income of $175,000, which is outstanding. It's also interesting to note that 2 years ago, the diocese Fidelity investment account was valued at $746,000. After the severe effects of the pandemic, it was valued at $781,000, and actually $783,000 2 days ago. We earned on a very conservative investment portfolio 10% this past year. So I'm pleased to say that this has been a good year, and we're facing some real challenges, which we'll discuss when we get to the budget. But any questions that anyone would have, I'll try to get quick answers for you.
Rachel Black, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I was hoping that we would see Mr. Barsky's report on screen while he went through it.
Well, I think you were sent the financials as part of your package, but I understand what you're saying. These were my notes that I prepared to give to you as a summary.
Let me see if I can find it here for you guys. I apologize for that. I have the budget versus the actual.
Yeah, I'm looking for it also, and one of us can share, although I think it'll be hard to look at the details on the screen.
Yeah, I agree.
It's in the agenda booklet, starting on page 18.
This is what we want. Is this what we're
Actually,
looking
that's
for?
17.
Is this what you wanted?
Maggie, that's not what's in the booklet, I don't believe. What's in the booklet is what Don was referring to, was the January to October 21 versus prior year.
Here we go. This is what I have.
That one.
That's this.
There you go.
Next page, yeah.
Maggie, I think one of the things that Don was, as he said, he was reading in a summary of it. And so be trying to pick it out of the reports. And he was giving a summary and overview. Is that correct, Don?
That's absolutely correct, yes. There are so many numbers that I don't think we can go into the great detail unless you read them slowly and have questions about them.
Does anybody not have access to this report that I am showing on the screen right now? If you do not have access to this report that was sent out in the email, please raise your hand using the Zoom function and we will get it to you.
Let me add that if you want to read this at your leisure and call me after this meeting, I'm always available to answer your questions.
Thank you, Don, for saying that. So does anybody have any questions for Don that need answers regarding the 2021 numbers and statements of activity? Okay, I see no one raising their hand, so I think it's okay to move on. At this time, we're going to have elections. There is only one person nominated for the Galilee Board of Trustees, and that person would be the Reverend Deacon Ken Rackley. Ken, would you like to speak in regards to that? You get 1 minute tops. Ken, go ahead.
I could. I thought we already went through this earlier.
Okay, that's fine.
We
But
have
I don't
not
know.
voted for you yet.
Oh, okay. Then I apologize. I have always had a great love of Galilee. Grown up at Galilee, my family has been very instrumental in making Galilee happen. I am the coordinator of Diocesan Youth Ministries, and I think it's an important link to link that as well with Galilee. So since there right now currently is no one running opposed to me, I don't have to ask for your vote, but I would like to ask for your support and want to be able to be a voice that you can have if you need some people to reach out to.
Thank you, Ken.
And I have a poll ready for voting.
Yes, so because he is running unopposed, we will vote now.
%97 in favor of electing Deacon Rackley.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So that's it. Deacon Rackley, you are now on the Galilee board. Welcome to the team, my friend. Thank you so much for your service. Okay. At this time, we will now show a brief video recorded from the Reverend Canon Hilario Cisneros, the Canon to Spanish-speaking ministries.
Give me just a minute to get that up. It's here somewhere.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. How great it is to be
Looks like I can't run it from the web. Give me a minute to download it and then I'll try again.
Thank you.
Possibly 2 minutes, according to my download speed. Just about ready.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. How great it is to be here with you, sharing this fantastic opportunity to renew the spirit of our diocese in this convention. This past year has been promising and challenging for the world, for our diocese, and for Spanish-speaking ministry. Part of my duties has been to oversee Spanish-speaking ministry, come to parishes to regular meetings, listen and promote friendship with Spanish-speaking clergy. We have developed a strategic vision for our ministry with suggestions, visions, and footprints to enhance the opportunities to focus our resources for Spanish ministry. I serve as a diocese liaison for provincial and national Hispanic Latino ministry with the National Church. I participated with the bishop and diocese staff in all the staff meetings, bringing issues of interest and concern for the whole group. My Sunday and weekly services at St. Jude's Ranch for Children nourished hundreds with preaching and fulfilled the sacramental needs for hundreds of families. St. Thomas opened the red doors to welcome the local Latino neighbors. A large group of children were confirmed. 100 renewed their faith thanks to the heroic service of Bishop Jim. Help is underway. St. Thomas is sponsoring clergy person during his postulancy. We hope to receive his holy orders this next summer. On special occasions, I have visited Christ Church, our largest in attendance, All Saints, second in numbers, and St. Luke's to supply. Because of the leadership of the Reverend Jorge, Father Rafael, Reverend Antonio Lopez, and yours truly, Christ Church, All Saints, St. Luke's, and St. Jude's Ranch for Children have nourished and are example of flourishing what's happening in our old diocese. What's coming? Today's spiritual needs of thousands of migrants, Latino families are not met by the institutional Roman Catholic traditions. It is our challenge as a diocese to come alongside these families, building relationships of transformation. The attached strategic vision will illustrate you about our plans as Spanish-speaking projects for the years to come in our diocese. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us, Elizabeth. Much appreciated. If anybody has questions about the Hispanic and Latin ministries in our diocese, you can always reach out to Canon Hilario, and he will give you all the information you need about how you can be a part of and contribute to and help with that. So, Connie, you have your hand raised?
Yes, were there any additions or changes to Cool, Maggie? Because that was before the report of the Spanish speaking thing. So if you need to announce anything for that.
Okay.
That point.
I've been told that there have only been people leaving a cool in the past year. The only confirmation was Marla as the new chair. Okay, so that is the only change to cool this year. Thank you for helping me with that. Okay. I would like to call upon Ken and Catherine for a moment before we move on to the budget. She had something she wanted to add.
And there's a question in chat that I'd like to share about cool.
Did we just address it?
No.
Okay.
Peter Hughes Cox writes, the diocesan canons say at each convention, the diocesan bishop with the concurrence of the convention shall appoint a commission on ordination and licensing, which will consist of, etc. I can skip that. And he says, don't we need to vote to ratify that? Connie?
Connie, yeah, I was gonna say Connie.
Yes, if the canons require it, it would be a good idea to do it. I would think.
Fair point. Okay, so what is the wording I need to use for that?
Is the bishop supposed to do that, or are you?
Yeah.
What does the canons? I'm sorry, I didn't have the canon in front of me.
Elizabeth, can you repeat it?
Sorry, I was starting to make a poll. So Peter quotes the canons as saying that diocesan bishop with the concurrence of convention appoints the commission. That's what Peter quoted.
Okay.
I have not verified that.
Okay. Is that for a new, it just needs to be done every convention? Is that what the canon says? I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Let me go, Kathleen.
Wait a minute, maybe I have it in here.
May I have the privilege of speaking?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Canon 3, Section 3 is short, reads, at each convention, the diocesan bishop, with the concurrence of the convention, shall appoint a commission on ordination of licensing, which shall consist of 5 clergy members, 5 deacons, and 5 lay members, with the deans to serve as ex officio members. The members shall be in communicates in good standing and canonically resident within the diocese. The duties of the committee shall be those prescribed by the canons of the Episcopal Church. The term of the members shall be limited to 3 years. In the last 12 months, 3 deacons, James Hobart, Ann Langevin, and Mike Marjoram, have left the commission and have not yet been replaced at this time. The chair has, Canon Catherine has resigned as chair, and Marla Asen has succeeded. And it would be up to the bishop. Everyone else who was on is still on and is listed on page 16 of the agenda booklet, which could be shown on the screen if you want, if somebody wants. The composition of the committee, and that would be the committee that Bishop Jim would reappoint and the diocesan convention would concur in his appointment.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
And
So I think that needs to be done. Maggie?
Okay, so Bishop Jim, do you appoint the commission as listed here on the screen?
yes, I have the info, and I am pleased to do that and to put it before you for further action.
Okay, and now the convention will concur or not?
I have a poll ready to start.
Okay, Elizabeth will. Okay, great.
Please cast your mind.
Yeah.
We're at 99% in favor.
All right, good.
Good. Wonderful. Thank you.
Now it's 98%.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maggie,
Yes.
Dr. Stomsky was listed on that slate and he is no longer the
Right.
dean. I don't know if that needs to be noted or.
Name removed.
That's, I'm about to do that.
Yeah. What Canon Catherine is going to say will rectify exactly what you're saying.
Thank you.
That's
Just so
right.
it's clean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Okay, wonderful. The chair recognizing Canon Catherine.
Okay, this is my omission and I ask your forgiveness for that. When I was reading the bishop's report about clergy who have departed, I failed to mention that Dean William Stomsky at Trinity Cathedral has retired. He has, excuse me, he has stepped down from leadership in the at Trinity and as of November 15th. And so that should be noted in our records as well.
And as he is no longer a dean, he is no longer an ex officio member of the.
He was an appointed member of COOL. So there is a lot of reshaping of COOL that will need to happen over this next year, especially as people have departed. But it was the wisdom of the group to wait until a new bishop is seated and to consecrated and to see the direction of how things are going to work before asking people to join or to appoint people to that commission. That was kind of the reasoning behind it.
Very wise. Thank you. All right. Why don't we take another short break because the next item of business might take a minute. So let's take another short break. Let's do about 5 minutes. So we'll reconvene at 11:06. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Maggie.
Elizabeth, are you still there? Elizabeth is not there. Okay. We have someone in the waiting room waiting to be let in. Steve, can you do that, or Maggie?
I got it.
Got it. Thanks. Perfect. Thanks.
I'll get up there.
date on that Sunday?
All right, convention. Let's go ahead and regather. Alrighty. Once we come back together, we will begin our discussion about the 2022 proposed budget, which has been a labor of love. That we've worked very, very hard on for many, many months. And hopefully we have come to something that will work for everybody. Thank you, Elizabeth. I was locked and loaded, but I'm glad you got it. Thank you. Let's see. Alrighty. So as most of you know, the budget has changed and has had several different iterations over the last several weeks and months. This is what we are voting on today, which is revised as per the discussion that was had last Saturday. At this point, I think the income budget and the expenditure budget are pretty much on track with what we can do and what is appropriate for our diocese. So what you're looking at, who's gonna present this? Let's see. Don and or Mike Wang can present this budget to us.
This is Mike. Would you like me to do this and then Don can chime in?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. What we're going to do is, as we've done in the past, in a couple of meetings, we're going to start top down for those of you who like top down information. And then we'll do bottom up details for those of you who want bottom up details to understand how it all fits together. Summary page you see in front of you is the summary page that integrates both the income and the expense budget. And it also shows the different versions that we've developed. And also it has some comments as to why we have made the changes that we did. So in column B, which is the proposed expenditure budget that we presented for most of you in August, really the summer of this past summer, we showed a pretty balanced budget of income and expenses. But there were several assumptions which proved in the passage of time to not be accurate, particularly with respect to the need to have Canon Catherine for the entirety of the 2022 year, as well as the need to start Bishop Gardner as of January 1st. So when you add the extension of time from for those two positions, about $150,000 of expenses. And so what you have in the shaded portion is the revised budget. This screen is a little bit off. I don't know whether you can slide it up a little bit so people can see it. There you go. The expenditure budget, you can see, goes from 755 as we originally thought of this summer to 863 and change. As you see the comments there, the budget change in expenditures reflects the conversations with the standing committee with Bishop-elect Gardner and comments from throughout the diocese over the course of the past few months. Now, a big change has been the income or the ask or the assessment. We're calling it assessment now because it's a lot easier to just take the assessment and divide by 12 than it is for each parish to do the asking calculation on a monthly basis. It makes it hard for them. It makes it hard for the diocese. And so we've changed that to an assessment. The assessment has changed substantially. And that is because, and it says unchanged from August. That's actually not correct. It's changed from August because in the conversation with many of the parishes, they felt that going back and using the 2019 actual giving or assessment as a basis for 2022 was overly optimistic. In other words, it asked too much from the parishes. So what we did, and we'll go through that in a minute, and we changed the income assessment and we reduced that amount by about 10% from the 2019 actual. So we took the 2019 actual. We had initially tried to use that as a surrogate for 2022. The feedback was that was too optimistic. So we took the 2019 actual and reduced it by 10%. Now, in the past week, Dawn and Steve did yeoman's job in trying to find out whether this number was indeed workable. And it seemed from the vast majority of folks that have responded that in fact, somewhere around this number spread out for each of the parishes was indeed an achievable number for 2022. And so you can remember that number 539,210, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Can we slide down a little bit? Okay, good, thank you. So when all is said and done, if you take the income and you subtract and you add the income from rent and sales, and then you take that as a sum from the expenses, you have about $188,000 in negative. You've got $188,000 more in expenses than you have in income. So how do you bridge that gap? Well, the feeling is perhaps what you do is we pull money from the Fidelity, the savings account. And you do that instead of doing it in a lump sum. You do it on a monthly basis, a monthly draw, so that you can carefully control expenses relative to income. And so the feeling was take 188,570, which was your overall negative amount income relative to expenses. And you draw that divided by 12, so that's $15,714, $15,714 a month. So that would be the braking mechanism, or the mechanism that would govern the rate of expenses, so that you don't get to the end of September, October, December and find out that you just overdrawn horribly. So the intent here is to put some type of braking mechanism or mechanism for which you can actually kind of see on a monthly basis what's going on. So if we can now turn to, well, first of all, are there any questions on this summary sheet? And we'll go to the details. This is the top down, folks. We'll give the details so people can see bottom up in a minute. So are there any questions so far?
I have one question. This is Wendy Roundtree.
Yes, ma'am.
Last week, or time is relative now, I don't know. When we,
it was last week.
Well, okay, it was last week. When we're on the call about this, I thought the breaking number was somewhere around 11,000.
That's correct.
Something. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the reason that it's gone up is because the income projected from the parishes was reduced. And if you reduce the income, then the draw on the Fidelity account will go up. It's like a balloon. You squeeze down one side, it's going to go up on the other.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Rachel Black is next.
Thank you. Mike, when I take that 15,714 number, which is your breaking number, and I multiply by 12, I get 188,568. That means to me that your breaking number, your 15,714, is a likely monthly draw to make your 188,570, not a no greater than draw. Am I misinterpreting you?
Your math is correct. The feeling is that if you were to need to draw more than 15,714 in any one month, you would start looking at the budget carefully. If you looked at it if you drew that much more than 2 months, it would require a review of the entire budget. So the answer is it's kind of both. It's an indicator that you have a problem, but the idea was you could never pull off more than 15,714 in any 1 month, and no more than 15,714 for 2 consecutive months. If that happened, then indeed people would have to look at the budget more carefully. In other words, it's both a braking mechanism and a review mechanism. If you drew less than that, that would be great. But again, you can't draw more than 15,714 in any 2-month period consecutively.
Michael Yukira, you have your hand raised.
Thanks, Maggie. I think this is somewhat similar to what was just asked, but I'm just trying to get a little more granular.
Sure.
Mike, this suggests that the expenses let me go back to the income for a second. The income, if this was passed, based on the revised assessments, you would know what's coming in, hopefully from the parishes, if we can afford to pay it. So let's just, for argument's sake, assume that that's what you're getting in monthly from the parishes.
Okay.
It would suggest that the expenses are equal every month in order for you to know what the maximum you should draw is.
Right.
So you say it's a braking mechanism, but if you need to, since all of these expenses are basically fixed, it's difficult. I mean, by and large, they are fixed. Their salaries, their salaries, there's benefits associated with salaries. So unless there were, just, okay, tell me what you're thinking, because you're not agreeing.
Okay, expenses, expenses can be rateable, which is everything divided by 12, or non-rateable.
Sure.
Expenses in our environment are both. For instance, some payments are done quarterly, and that's why I kind of go back and forth. You can accrue them, and that's, I think, what we're going to have to do is, in order to show what the rate of expenses actually are, you kind of have to accrue some expenses that are quarterly and accrue them on a monthly basis just to see where you are. So yeah, I think what you're going with is, if we know the rateable income, which is what the parishes think they are, shouldn't we also know the rateable expenses and be able to get things ahead of time? Yeah, it's true. And that's why the braking mechanism works. However, some things are quarterly or semi-annual. And so you have to kind of take all of this with a little bit of analysis.
So you're going to be looking at the cash flow?
I think so. I think that's,
and determine what you're going to be drawing?
Yeah, I think the core issue is, yeah, because expenses aren't going to be quite everything divided by 12.
Exactly.
So you got to be careful with that. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Raphael, go ahead.
Yes, and I totally agree with Michael, Yakira. And now, since we're going to vote, we're voting that definitely we are increasing our expenses based on a reduction and very achievable, but challenging as well, of incomes for the 2022. So we are rounded up to $200,000, and but we are voting that we no greater than 15,715. We're voting on that. So what are you going to do? Are we going to vote? Are you going to propose every month or quarterly, when definitely we are not, the diocese is not receiving the incomes necessary to cover those expenses? And definitely the only one way is to withdraw with the Fidelity account, and you need to withdraw more than 15,000. How are you going to manage this with this, since we're voting no greater than 15,000?
Well,
I think, and this is kind of maybe above my pay grade. I think the diocese will be voting on a budget. The mechanism by which the budget is administered is what I call the braking mechanism. I'm not sure you're actually going to be voting to approve the braking mechanism as you are the budget, and the staff, meaning the Steve and Dawn and Ken and Catherine with the bishop oversight. They're going to be looking at this as a mechanism to administer the budget. But I think the budget is being adopted in terms of the summary, but I don't think the braking mechanism is a requirement. I think that's just a mechanism for supervision and management.
That's correct. That's correct, Mike. And the budget is managed by the standing committee and executed by diocesan staff. So if that helps clarify that. So the braking mechanism will trigger a meeting with the standing committee, because we're the ones who manage the funds. Does it answer your question, Raphael, in regards to procedure?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Rachel Black.
Thank you, Maggie. I remember from an earlier conversation, maybe it was last Saturday, that the Fidelity account currently stands at about 788,000, 789,000. If I am taking the maximum, the 15,714 or 713 monthly from that account, I think my numbers tell me that we are reducing the Fidelity account by 24%
Correct.
in 2022.
That's correct. Yep.
Well, yeah, all things being equal, that's correct. Fidelity will likely, hopefully will grow a little bit. So, but if you were to just take this number and divide by the Fidelity balance, yeah, it's about 25%.
Yeah, that's correct. Which is obviously challenging. Wendy, yes?
I just wanted to, I had made a note. Don Barksey, did you mention that our return for that account was approximately 10% this year? Not to say, you know, there's no future crystal balls in terms of what, I was just looking backwards. Was that about our return for that account this year?
That's correct.
Okay.
But I also keep in mind that in the budget of other income is my projection of what we're going to earn on the Fidelity account during the year as part of the budget.
Right. And Maggie, did you say something to the effect last week that the new bishop had some ideas perhaps going forward that maybe could be implemented during the year that perhaps could, you know, help along some of these lines?
Yeah, there are some ideas we're still kicking around that are in the hopper that we're not quite ready to move on or share with anybody because they haven't been well researched enough.
Right.
But there are some ideas in the hopper for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, you were next, and then Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, so two quick points, Don. I just want to confirm that what I thought you just said, that in the summary here where it says income, rent, sales, and other, that $135,000 amount, that already includes a draw of income from the Fidelity account.
Not
right?
a draw, it includes the rate of earnings in the Fidelity account projected for the year 2022.
But the way this is presented, that's a source of funds to pay bills. That's why. I
Yeah,
said
that's correct. That's correct.
So in that income, rent, sales, other line, there's already money coming out of the Fidelity account. And then in addition, there's this plug number that says that if we spend all this money, if we want to pay the bills, we're going to have to draw out another 188,000 in addition.
No. In the number of let me look at it, $135,000 is, I think I'm projecting 45,000 or 42,000 of income earned on our Fidelity account for the year.
Right.
So it's not a negative, it's a plus.
Yeah, it's a plus, but people were making comments about, well, we also are going to have income from the Fidelity account. I'm just trying to confirm that, yes, the budget is already taking that estimated income out.
We're accounting for it. Yes, Peter, that's correct. I might have misstated.
Yeah. So the actual amount that could come out of the Fidelity account might be 45,000 of current year income plus an additional 188,000, right? Okay.
I think it's correct the way you said it. Yes.
Okay.
I don't agree, Peter. Let's say that again.
Well, in line 5, it says there's income there, and you've said that in that 135 is $45,000, which is your estimate of the income that will be earned on
yes, I agree with that.
During 2022.
Yes.
Okay. So that total of 135 is presented here is funds available to pay for expenditures during 2022.
Absolutely, yes, okay. All
Yeah, so
right.
I'm just repeating that there's 45,000 in the line that says 135, and then to pay for all the bills, there's another 188,000.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Sorry, but my further question is just so I understand this thing in the lower left-hand corner. Use of fidelity funds in 2 consecutive months will initiate an immediate cessation of further spending until a financial review with corrective action. If we identify no further sources of income, if we spend 1/12 of the budgeted expenditure amounts in January and February, we have no other sources of income, then won't we draw $15,714 in January and February? And therefore, by the end of February, we will already have initiated an immediate cessation of further spending pending a financial review. Is that what those words mean?
I think the intent is to say that if you drew the max, you have to have a review. If you drew less than that, I think you're okay. Part of the reason that it's written the way it was is probably a little bit sloppy on my part. It's probably not as precise from a CPA point of view. The intent was to try and draw attention to and by staff in the standing committee for expenses. If the expenses are 6,000 a month, you say, okay, we're doing well. If the expenses are 15,714 each month, then you got to start saying there, okay, are we on track? Have our rateable expenses come in as they say? So yeah, I think, Peter, what you're saying is, aren't you sailing for a whaling come February? And the answer is, I think February, you're going to have to look at it in any event.
No, I don't think so. I'll tell you why. First of all, it's my job to watch the cash flow and to report it if something that unusual is happening. And if it happened in excess of that number, I would bring it to the standing committee's attention. We don't have, for example, we give a nice amount of money to Galilee in, I think it's March or May. So in January, February, we're going to have a plus cash flow. It will not be negative. As Mike has said, there are some things that are paid quarterly, semi-annually, and I just have to watch the cash flow, and I do that on a daily basis.
Okay, so Don, you're saying that in January and February, there will be no need to draw any of the $188,000.
And that's my best guess, yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, but then after that, within the first 6 months of the year,
yes,
it might be possible that you go 2 times.
Yes.
In 2 consecutive months to take money from the Fidelity account.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a sense of how long this is going to take before this is triggered. Okay. And I guess the other thing I wanted to confirm what you were saying, Mike, is that, with respect to who's doing what and the fact that we only meet in convention normally once a year, and what happens during, between now and the next convention. My understanding of the canons is that on the income side, that the assessment mechanism, the asking mechanism, is only determined by convention, and that cannot be modified until next convention. But then on the expense side, the standing committee does prepare a budget which is put before the convention. It's noted that it's a debatable resolution, which is what we're doing. But we're also pointing out that a budget is just a budget that standing committee actually has to make, and staff diocesan staff have to make lots of individual decisions over the course of the year. But so that getting back to this mechanism in the lower left-hand corner, is this part of the resolution? Right? Is
No.
this?
To answer your question quickly, Peter, no, that part is not. The only thing we are voting on as a convention is the proposed assessment budget and the proposed expenditure budget. And the summary page above that, the breaking mechanism is just us explaining to you as standing committee our intention behind how we're going to manage this budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, there's a lot of people with their hands up. So Peter, I'm going to move on to the next person, okay? Michael Yakira.
Thanks, Maggie. First of all, is there something that dictates what the use of this endowment, that's what I'm calling it, the amount that sits in the Fidelity account, how it's to be used? Is there anything that says this is the purpose of it?
No, and I think the use of the word endowment confuses that. It is just an investment savings account.
Okay, so that can be used any way that the standing committee wants.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now the mechanics, Don and Mike, of what happened from current year to what's being reflected in this year. In looking at what Don presented earlier, it showed investment returns from the Fidelity account of $61,000 through October. So if we look at approximately the next 2 months at the same rate, we'd have about $75,000 of income from the Fidelity account for 2021. That number in the original budget, I believe, was expected to be reduced to $45,000. And I assume that the reduction is probably maybe twofold, but it at least is onefold, and that is reflecting what we expected to withdraw from the Fidelity account when this was originally presented last week, or $112,000. So when we look at $75,000 of income, and it's now $42,000 of income, the reduction in income is because of the draws that are expected to be made against the Fidelity account. That's a question rather than a statement.
That's correct, right, Don?
I'm a little bit lost there. First of all, I can't predict the stock market for the next 60 days towards the end of the year.
I'm not asking for prediction. I'm asking what you used in this proposed budget, Don. Did you use a 5% return?
No, I used a lower, I think I was like $42,000. I wanted to be conservative for this coming year.
Right, and all I'm saying is that the reduction from the current year's expected income from Fidelity, which now stands at 61,000 and probably should be in the order of $70,000 to $75,000 by the end of the year, for argument's sake.
Okay.
Because it's $6,000 a month for the first 10 months. That amount is reduced to $42,000 in this budget.
Yes.
Because of the fact that maybe you've been more conservative, but more importantly, you've reduced the amount in the Fidelity account by $188,000.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes. Well, I have a question. I don't know if we have Canon Hilario and online, but it's about the Latino ministries and numbers. And well, as we know, before Hilario came as a canon, we had Bernardo, and at that time the expenses for Bernardo was only 20,000 plus some benefits. Now we're getting about 90,000, in the Latino ministry, which is great, to support the Latino ministry. But I would like to, at that time, and since I've been involved in the treasury of the diocese, I remember that we had some incomes from St. Jude. I know that usually they are in this income, rent, sales, and others. And at that time was Bernardo was like a St. Jude missionaire. And I don't see in all the parishes. I know that I don't see St. Jude incomes. And also, as we heard in Hilario's report, St. Thomas is going to start the Latino ministry, or I think already started. But we see a reduction in the assessment on St. Thomas. So I would like to see how can we expect, we already increased the expenses as a canon in the diocese from $20,000 to almost $90,000. But also I would like to see how are we expecting the incomes from St. Jude, since there's a very large activity every week. And also from St. Thomas, how come we are, or where we can see the incomes for this year?
Fair question. I believe their St. Jude has been having some financial difficulties, so they haven't been able to increase their revenue there. And I know St. Thomas, because they are still in a ramp up kind of mode, that they aren't increasing their revenue much either. So I think that is a long-term goal and question that might be maybe like a 5-year plan, but it's not going to be it's not going to impact the 2022 budget. Does that answer your question, Padre?
Well, as an answer, yes. You still don't see the incomes that we used to have from St. Jude, and it was even at that time it was like a 550 to 100, and there is I know there is a Father Hilario has done an excellent job over there, and there is a lot of activities. So that's why I don't see why we're not seeing the income from St. Jude, since we're putting a lot of time in and investing a lot of time over there.
That's a fair question. I think the standing committee, as a standing committee, we can look into that.
I think we budgeted for St. Jude's like $5,200 for the year. That's in our numbers in the income side.
Are you saying St. Hugh's? St. Hugh of Lincoln?
No, I'm sorry, St. Jude's.
Oh, St. Jude's. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Are you ready to move on to the next question? Is that okay? Okay. Melvin, you're next.
Don, one question, and I guess it's very important because the income, majority of the income that we're looking at is coming from the parishes. Is there going to be a date that the expected assessment is going to be that you're looking for it to be paid by the parish?
Well, ideally, it would be by the end of the month. So if I'd like to plan that January's assessment will be paid by January 31st. I know that's going to overlap with some parishes that would pay December's asking in January. And so if it doubles up, if they just send a note, we'll catch it up this and that date. I'll work around that.
Okay. And will you have some mechanism to find out, or that you'll check on seeing where parishes are online, since we're making this easier for them to calculate?
I do that every month, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Melvin. Kathy Klein.
I have two questions. And apologize again if somehow I've missed something. The standing committee has been so thoughtful of how they've tried to plan the procedure for drawing the money out. I wondered if there's a plan for paying it back. I realize this sounds way too premature. I just want to know, is there a plan and a commitment to replace the money?
Fair question, very fair question. And yes, it has been part of the discussion. A specific plan to repay it back, no, but a future plan to increase our savings and to possibly plan for a separate endowment account. Those are conversations that we've been having as a staff and as standing committee.
And this was mentioned a while back about, I guess if there was a shortfall, the immediate cessation of, expenses. What does that really mean? Does that mean we can hold, back an assessment to the national church, or does it mean people being paid by the diocese will not receive paychecks?
It might mean all of those things. Yeah, it might mean any of those things.
Okay.
Depending on the circumstances. Obviously, the standing committee will try to make decisions, and the staff will make decisions that are in the best interest of the diocese and all the people involved.
Okay. Thank you.
Jeff Coleman.
Yes, Jeff Coleman, Epiphany Junior Warden. Just to piggyback a little bit further on Mr. Yukara's point about the braking mechanism, we're looking at $188,000 approximate deficit, and taking out approximately $15,000 a month to make up for that deficit. I'm just rounding the numbers out. So we're looking at $30,000 just for the first 2 months. As was mentioned earlier, a 10% investment is being made, or interest is being made on the Fidelity account, thereby reducing our interest of $3,000 just for the first 2 months. If we were to carry this out for the full year, it would be $18,000. That, again, I'm rounding numbers off. Is that something that we should add on to that deficit of $188,570?
As I understand, sorry, Apollo's having a moment. As I understand your question, you're thinking about reducing the income from the Fidelity account due to the draw that we're making. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
No, the income that Don calculated for the Fidelity account is including the draw already. It's already included.
Thank you.
And then we have another person's hand raised. It says KWG.
That's Kevin Goss. I'm the senior warden at St. Catherine's in Reno. And I was, maybe this is a little premature, but I wanted to move the conversation into the proposed assessments. I know the budget committee works hard to put this together, with all due respect, but now we have the benefit of seeing our pledges for 2022 at the parish level. And our pledges are lower and our rent expense is higher. The number that's in there for us of $17,412 is about $5,000 higher than what we could commit to at this time.
Okay,
So-
we will get to the assessment in a moment, because we did have a long conversation on Saturday about how we could make some adjustments, and I want to make sure that Mike has an opportunity to share about how we have made that adjustment from the previous iteration of the budget we had a week ago. So
Okay.
thank you for your patience. I just want to make sure that we are all abundantly clear on the braking mechanism, on the budget summary, before we move on to the expenditure budget and the assessment.
Okay, I'll go back to being patient then.
Thank you so much. Reverend Walton, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing well, loving retirement. I just have a quick question about no more than the 15,714 or whatever that number was per month. So if we don't need it for January and February, we've already reduced the 188 to 133.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
So I think that's something we need to recognize as well.
Yeah, but let me interrupt. But when I have to send a $22,000 check to Galloway, I forget the month, and we do it twice, that eats up some of that cushion. So it's predictable that we're going to have some negative months, cumulative negative months. Does that make sense? We have budgeted in here $45,000 for Galloway. It's paid in 2 installments during the year. It's not going to be in January and February. When it comes up, we're going to have the cash for it.
So you may take some money out even if the expenditures aren't there in a given
I won't
month.
take it out. It'll just sit in Fidelity until it's needed for Galilee, for example.
But it will count. It will count toward, we're gonna,
I think the term, for lack of a better term, is if you know that you have an expense coming up and you haven't drawn this 15, 7, 14 in 1 month, you're going to accrue, that is kind of save, sock away, put away some of that in anticipation of paying a larger amount for that one particular expense item in the future. So, you know, understand expenses over the course of the year aren't always divisible by 12, but the 15, 7, 14 is the number that we're going to use as an indicator from management point of view.
hope that helps. Okay, Lynn, you're next.
I'm sorry, I'm Lynn Charlotte Trinity. I'm trying to get, I need the cookies on the lowest shelf to try to understand what we're doing. If we're going to, we know that we're going to draw this amount of money over the course of 12 months, because that's how we've in essence balanced the budget. So to have a 2-month breaking period to reassess what we're doing, I understand that we always want to look at the numbers, but we already know we're going to be doing it. And I now understand that we're going to be accruing. I was afraid that if we didn't take the draw, that by the time we needed the money, then, and we've passed the 2-month breaking, that wasn't working either. So how do we acknowledge that this draw is going to happen every month because we've already identified the expenditures for it, short of some miracle that we don't have to make an expenditure for? And I'm just trying to get a handle on what the breaking mechanism really is. And then for the next piece of it, where are we if we need more than this 15,000? And I know I mentioned this at the meeting on Saturday. Will there be a discussion of setting priorities in the event that we need to cut the budget so that we have those priorities outlined before we're in the midst of a crisis trying to identify what they are?
I think the ball rests in my lap. I have to watch income and expenses every month. I watch it every day. And if I see something happening that indicates that we're going to exceed this $15,000, I will bring it to the standing committee for review and action. So it really rests in the finance officer's responsibility to watch the numbers.
Yeah, and to answer the second part of your question, Lynn, the priorities will be set by the standing committee when we have a full meeting, which obviously has not happened since Saturday, right? That the priorities fall on the standing committee, whereas the monitoring falls, like Dawn said, on him. So I hope that answers your questions. Yeah, if we have to cease spending things, we will. We have to. If we have to adjust our priorities of the budget, the standing committee will do that accordingly, even if it might be a little drastic, but we'll make it work. Because this is our priority. If we set the standard for ourselves, that's what it will be as soon as we vote on it. Stuart.
This is just a mostly a confirmation. So Don, typically in past years, the subsidy from the diocese has come in 2 chunks, as you referenced. Some years February and May, some years March and May.
Right.
It sounds like looking ahead to next year, and this is important for our planning because our winter months tend to be fairly light with regard to revenue and so on, because we're lacking groups. It sounds like you're thinking next year it's best for the diocese that March and May are the months that we will be looking at for those.
I think that's what I have projected, yes.
Okay, great. That's all I wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Okay, I don't see anyone else with their hands raised in regards to the summary page. So I think it's time to move on to the expenditures. We have really done a lot of work on the expenditures. We've hashed this out a lot. There's been several conversations around the diocese about these expenditures. So, Mike, would you like to do a brief?
Sure. Again, this is now a detail sheet for those we're going to build bottom up now. The column B was kind of what was done in August. Column C is what we're proposing now. Column D is the difference between, and then column E is the comments as to why. I'm only going to go through some of the big items, so because those affect what I call the signal. Those affect whether you're plus or minus and why. What are the big changes? Clearly, the big change was the new bishop adding 2 more months, so it's a full year. Set salary for canon for the ordinary was a change because in August we had envisioned payment through February 28 of 2022. It will now go through the end of the year. So those chunks right there, salary only is $110,000, $23,900 for the new bishop and $86,400 for canon for ordinary, and that's the difference. If you slide down a little bit, there were some corrections, as you can imagine. As we get later in the year, we can get a little bit better estimate of corrected expenses. So there's some minor corrections for canon Hilaria, canon to the ordinary. If you slide down a little bit, can we slide down this slide?
Please slide down.
There we go. Thank you. There's some minor changes. Payroll taxes, we dropped a little bit. These are things that Dawn has highlighted as kind of more precision to our previous estimates. Again, so let's slide down a little bit more. There's nothing really substantial here. There's a little bit, some changes in benefit packages for some of the employees. There are some changes to health, obviously with the benefit packages for extended periods, the health insurance and the other, some of the pension issues were raised up. With the, keep going down. Yeah, again, new pension. The big change here, pension for the canon for the ordinary includes a full year. So a lot of this, again, anything you see above, kind of where we're talking with salary and benefits, those are kind of package type deals. Go down a little bit. Keep going, sliding down. Oh, moving expenses. We have to get our our bishop here. So we're going to try and put 12,500 for moving. There has been a change in the assessment to the, I guess that's the national church. Is that correct, Don?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 5,000 for the national church. That's up. You can see there's a lot of zeros because we didn't change very much. There's a new item 10s. That's kind of not a big thing in the vast scheme of things. Slide down. Lambeth conference, we're going to move that to 0. That's, I think, the conference in the UK. It's something that diocese just can't budget given the circumstances. Slide down. Don again has eliminated a few other things which I think are helpful to the cause. Go down. There's a yellow highlight. Province 8 should be Roman 8 rather than Arabic 8. Province 8 leadership training. It was omitted inadvertently from the previous years. It should have been added. So that's a line item that's going to be added to it in the future. Keep going down. That's about it. So we added about 130,000 in salary and benefits. And we netted out, after cutting where we could, $106,000. And so the expense budget for 2022 started out in August at 755. It's now at 863 and change. Questions?
Okay, I don't see anyone raising their hands. I hope that we have done a good job as a team working through this expenditure side of the budget and explaining it. So let's go ahead and move on to the assessment side, which is obviously new from last Saturday based on our conversations. And Mike, you can explain the process we've taken over the last week and what the numbers are now.
Okay, so it has been a week. It has been a week when we heard what the parish was saying. And parishes were saying that using the 2019 actual as a surrogate for 2022 was unreasonable, and that the 2022 income, and therefore the income to the parish, and therefore the assessments, should not be as optimistic as using 2019 actual. So we heard that. We actually did two things. First, we heard it and we developed back of the envelope calculations for percent reductions. And then we asked the parishes, and Steve Sims sent out a note earlier this week saying, can you and the parishes out there give us an estimate of what you think would be appropriate for 2022 assessment? And the data came back fairly consistent, but that said that, yeah, maybe it's close. It's a little bit high, but not too much, except there are a few that said 2019 actuals just are a non-starter. So between the mix of information saying 2019 actuals might be okay, maybe a little high, to a few saying 2019 actuals are just not reasonable, we looked at what folks thought they could do. And when you average everything out and kind of take a little bit more conservative and not over assess people, we said, let's take a 10% reduction from the 2019 actual. So in the column C, you saw that was what we started out with initially. And again, initially is August. What we heard since then is, okay, we'll take 10%, we'll take 90% of that. We'll take a 10% reduction. And let's use that as a 2022 assessment. Then look at the difference between the two is column F, which is what would be reduced. What reduction in your assessment, parish assessment, would be in 2022. You scroll down, most of them are negative, which you would expect, right? And instead of 599, which we started out in August, we're now at 539. 539,210, which is the number you saw on slide 1. So what we're saying is we're projecting, instead of 2019 actual, 10% reduction from 2019 actual as a surrogate for 2022. And the 539,210 is the assessment sum that the diocese would use in their budget.
Okay, are there any questions? Raphael, go ahead.
Yes. Well, based on the first question, that is the mechanism. Again, can we use the same I would say the same premises, that is going to be a mechanism for each parish to report as it go. So I mean, we know that our incomes changes throughout the year, and there are some low month and high month. You know, of course, we are approving, for example, for All Saints, $35,000, but is the mechanism that we're going to use in order that by the end of the year we're going to report the 35. So maybe at the beginning, based on the incomes, we're not going to be able to report $3,000. But since we are approving a budget, we can apply the same thing for our parish. It's the mechanism to reach at the end of the year the $35,000. Is that correct?
A couple things. First, I think the number for, I'm looking at All Saints, would be 31, not 35. 31,559. It's in the yellow, highlighted in the yellow. The other thing is, and I think this might have escaped some's attention. What we had been told is that a monthly calculation to determine the actual asking was a burden. And so I think what has been done and this can obviously, I can always be corrected, is that this would be an assessment. So it'd be a straight across the board, 31,559 divided by 12. And that would be a monthly draw.
What about those months that we cannot definitely achieve that amount? Because as I said, you know, we estimate that 35, but it's for the whole year, but not the same, not every month are the same.
Understood, but you have the same problem. You have some savings. I don't know in particular your situation, but most of the parishes have some cash in banks that they could use to subsidize the low income months. If you don't have, for whatever reason, you contact the office and let us know what your situation is.
Okay, definitely we will.
Okay, and our friend KWG, I forgot your name, I apologize. I know you have a question.
Yeah, it's Kevin from St. Catherine's in Reno. I just would iterate the same point that I did before, that, you know, appreciate all the work the budget committee puts into this, but we can't support an assessment of $17,412. It's about $5,000 higher than what our budget would be. And we're in the same spot as the diocese. We're going to rely on pulling from our savings to make it through the year because of the lower pledge amount that we have this year. So I don't know what else to say. We need to, for St. Catherine's, we need to cut about $5,000 out of that income.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Kevin. I just wanted to say something. When Mike was sharing about this, what we did over the last week is we asked you what each parish could probably was expecting to pay for an asking/assessment. And instead of plugging those numbers directly in, because we did not get a response from everybody, we just averaged the differences throughout the whole diocese. And I think that that's pretty clear, but obviously there are some challenges. Like St. Catherine's is a unique situation. I know that there are some parishes that had large donations in 2019, which is inaccurately inflating the asking actuals from 2019. And I know that those are some challenges. If that happens to be the case for you, please reach out to the diocese, reach out to Dawn, reach out to myself and the standing committee, and we can try to make those adjustments as we go. I don't know if that helps or makes any sense, but this is the best we could do with the data and the numbers that we had available to us. Okay, next person is Shep and Joy Curtis.
As we relayed to you all we were one of those that had been totally inflated. And for this to be a flat 10% across the diocese really is, I find, I guess the word I want to use is inexcusable for trying to make this budget work. And I think that at this point, I am very reluctant to approve a budget. I really think the standing committee needs to go back and come up with a budget that makes a lot more sense. I'm sorry, but that's where I am. Thank you.
And I would just like to comment as junior warden, Shep is treasurer, but I am junior warden. I had a question and I didn't know how to raise my hand on the pension for canon to the ordinary. It went from 5,811 to 34,863. I understand that she was going from working 3 months to 12 months, but that seems like more than a 4-time increase. And so I didn't understand that at all. And I also am reluctant to approve a budget that doesn't seem to be accurate for many of the parishes. I understand there was a time squeeze between last Saturday's meeting and this meeting, and reducing everybody by 10% is a quick and easy way to do it. But as St. Catherine's has said, you know, they're quite a bit short of it being able to meet it. Coventry Cross is short. We have a bare bones budget. We have members of our congregation, and we have very few members in our congregation, but most of us are elderly. But we're reducing our budget, taking care of our own property and reducing, you know, outside care. We're continuing with our cleaning stuff. Before the pandemic, we used to do our own cleaning, but that wasn't sufficient to meet the standards to reopen. And so now we have cleaning expenses that we need to continue at least as long as the pandemic is active. And so our budget is extremely tight already, and that needs to be reflected before we can pass the budget. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for sharing that with us. The next person with their hand raised is Sally Dickinson.
Hello, yeah, my name is Sally Dickinson. I'm the treasurer at St. Catherine's. I just wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit on what Kevin said. 2019 versus 2022 is going to be a really tough year for St. Catherine's. Basically, most of ours are fixed costs, salaries and rent. And our salaries and rent are basically now $50,000 more than our pledges. So you can imagine the deficit that we're going to be running this year. We're going to try, we've tried every year since I've been involved to pay our assessment, but I just can't see that we're going to be able to take 17,000 divide by 12 and pay $14.51 a month. So my question is, if that's just not going to be possible and we can't break the endowment rules on some other money that we have, what would you suggest would be our course of action? Do we revert back to a formula on 19% of asking net rent? Or how would you suggest we handle this?
I would say communicate directly with myself and with Dawn, and we can work something out with you directly. It'll be a case-by-case basis, I think.
Well, my second point is I think you're being optimistic about only, you know, having 2 months of 15,000 and then you're going to call a halt to it. I know that you're taking some things into accrual. I don't know if those accruals will sort of add up to your 15,000, but I'm a bit suggesting that you may want to, instead of doing a 2 month at 30 grand, is to look at maybe a quarterly. If we go over 45,000 over a quarter, then we reevaluate, because as Don rightly points out, some things are done on an uneven interview. And if you're not taking into count these accruals, you're going to be triggering this review quite quickly, I believe.
I think that might be partially intentional on our part. We want to make sure that we're staying on top of the budget as closely as possible as the standing committee. We made a commitment several years ago that we were going to try and stop something like this from happening, and we've been unable to do so. And so we're going to use this year to do some deep assessment of our needs as a diocese, and I think part of the intention is to trigger this braking mechanism if necessary, sooner rather than later.
Maggie.
Yes.
Elizabeth would like to speak, but she can't raise her hand.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Elizabeth, why don't you go ahead and say something?
The hosts are unable to raise their hands or vote in polls or things like that. Speaking again on behalf of Coventry Cross, where I'm the priest in charge, the adjusted listed amount for Coventry Cross amounts to 35% of our budget. And that applies to our budget for 2020, 2021, and 2022, which are all very similar. As Shep stated, we had a large bequest in 2019, and we paid full asking on it because it went into the general fund, and I feel we're being penalized for that. And it's impossible for us to pay $9,000. Are you going to be enforcing that we will not be able to vote at future diocesan conventions if we cannot meet these numbers?
Like I was saying to the previous person, we really need to have these discussions on a case-by-case basis, because like I was aware of your situation at Coventry Cross. We tried to create this budget, so we only had a week to fix this page, right? So if this is wildly inaccurate, and you can provide us documentation and those sorts of things, those conversations can and will happen, because of course you want to maintain your voting status, but more than that, we don't want to overly burden churches who were, like you said, unfairly assessed based on that large gift you received in 2019.
Yeah. And how will we deal with those effects to the diocesan budget? That's
a great question, and I don't have a really clear answer for you. Here's my dilemma. Okay, this page has only changed in the last week, right? This page has been this way since August, and a lot of these problems are only coming up now, and so we haven't been able to address the problems in as quickly as orderly a way as we could have, and so now we're kind of in a situation where now we have to take these things on a case-by-case basis. So I don't know what else to say beyond that. We've done our best. I want to say that it is my deepest desire to do right by this diocese, and this budget has been very difficult to put together. And there's been a lot of changes, and we're trying to accommodate everybody, and this is the best we've come up with to this point, right? So I really strongly encourage you, especially at Coventry Cross and some other places that had that same problem, to just reach out and have conversations, because that's been our process doing this budget, is to just try to be open and have conversation. And so that's not going to stop even after this meeting. It's not going to stop. It's going to continue. So I hope that answers your question. We're really trying our best. Yeah. Thank you for your question, though. Sandy. Sandy, I can't hear you, friend. You need to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Okay, 5 of us people are keeping the building going. We are paying $900 every 3 months for the insurance for St. Paul's, the Prospector. And we pay over $100 just for the water and sewer. We have no choice. This last month, it was $190. We never know how much it's going to be. So 5 of us are keeping up the church. If we don't keep the church going, we can't evacuate it, because our junior warden is making sure that everything is right in the church. We've had to get rid of vermin who've been in our church in the past, and we've had to do. The 5 of us are keeping track of this church. We can't afford to pay more because you can only do so much. We can't evacuate the church because we got to make sure it doesn't fall apart. They say the roof is not going to last through the winter. And I know that we've had a couple of, we have money from the state. We've had 2 other sources of money, but we need more in order to, we can't just fix the roof. They won't allow us to because they have to do a lot of things first. So I don't want to get into it right now, but the fact is we can afford to keep paying the asking, but we can't pay more. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Yeah, I know you guys are in a tough spot too. Your building is in disrepair. Most certainly. Okay. Melvin Stringer.
In support of what you're saying, Maggie, that we have to do these things on a case-by-case basis. And really, I think all of us, if we look at this in total, everyone is saying that there is a problem for their parish, but we also have the problem for the entire diocese. And it's going to take a lot of prayer. It's going to take a lot of forward thinking. It's going to take some creative thinking on all of the parishes. And we're looking at it right now in December and projecting out. And Don has, got to figure out, the bills that he's got to pay in January and all of those things. But I think that we have to understand that the approval of this budget is necessary so that we can begin moving forward and doing something. If we don't, we're dead in the water for going forward. So we have to look at it. And individually, as I said, there are a lot of parishes that are going to have problems. And there may be parishes that won't have, that they will have an abundance. And we would hope that they would share any abundance that they have. So our faith has to be strong. We have to move forward and we have to keep it going. Or otherwise, we're saying that the whole diocese is dying. Thank you.
Thank you, Melvin. Shep and Joy, Curtis.
Hi, I have two comments. Shep goes once a month to St. Albans, and I know that Trudy also goes to St. Albans in Yarrington, and they are not on this list at all. So I don't know if they can contribute anything. They only have a few people also. But St. Mark's only has a few people and they're on here. So I don't understand why St. Albans was left off. But anyway, also before it used to be in asking, it was a percentage of what a church received. And now it's an assessment. So what if a church gets a whole bunch of new members or has some miraculous new income? Do they then change their percentage and give more to the diocese, or do they just get to keep that? How is the fluctuation in income accounted for? If at the beginning of the year, we're getting a flat assessment, which some churches may not be able to meet, and some other church may get more. And then as was mentioned, St. Jude's isn't on here. So I don't know why a couple of places were left off. But I just wanted to raise those questions. Thank you.
Yeah, good couple of questions. Not sure how we missed those couple of parishes.
We didn't miss. St. Jude's is in the other income number.
Okay.
That's included.
What about St.
But
Albans?
it's not a parish.
A mission. It's a mission, not a parish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other half of your question is we as a standing committee decided to switch from an asking to an assessment format to be more in line with the national church standards and best practices. So that was what we were advised to do, and we have done it because the intention is to make things more stable around the diocese for parishes and more predictable. So we don't end up in a situation like what Coventry Cross is experiencing, where they have a large gift and now they have to pay a large amount of asking, and then that throws off budgets for everybody. We're trying to just level things out a bit, and that's why we made that change. I hope that answers your question. It's also considered best practices around the wider church. So
Okay, thank you for answering.
yeah. Okay, Terry Kane.
Actually, I'm going to defer to Jim Lamb, our senior warden from Trinity. He's been trying to raise his hand but couldn't.
Oh, thank you. Okay, friend. You may.
Yes, assume you can hear me?
Yes.
Just wanted to, and I know the standing committee has a huge task that it's been trying to deal with, as local parishes like Trinity are doing as well, when your stewardship campaigns are not coming in as we had hoped. And we did respond to the request to give an estimate of what we thought we would be able to do for next year. And unfortunately, the number that's showing there now is about almost 20,000 more than what we had estimated we could meet in the coming year. But I don't have an answer for you either. I think we are all struggling to how we're going to survive through some difficult economic times, and the standing committee has a huge challenge. And thank you for what you're trying to do, but I don't think that Trinity is going to be able to meet the number that's being shown on the page.
Thank you. Ken Rackley.
I have a very Pollyanna viewpoint. I am a youth leader, and in our youth, we know that a lot of times we say, well, youth don't give money. Well, they just take, well, one of the things that I'd like to put forward is, my question is, I know that realistically, there's things that happen realistically, and my uncle being an ex-RXA and Dick Stuffelbeam, he's the ground that pulls me from the clouds. However, I would like us to prayerfully, I think we are, and I'm not trying to say we're not, but put this in God's hands and know that our standing committee and our diocese will work with each other. And that's what we need. I feel we need to do, is work with each other and talk about it and let God lead us through the Spirit. My question is, there's two things. One, we pass this budget and say, we're going to live into it because God will allow us to do so. Or two, we say, well, we're not going to do this because this is stopping us. So therefore, let's not pass this budget. And then we got to figure out what we're going to do. Are we going to tell our bishop-elect that we can't pay her salary, and then therefore we need to become a mission district? I don't know. So there are a lot of things, but I know that there's been a lot of work that's been happening in this. And I think that there's more work to be done. So my question would be, do we just, in faith, put the wall out and let God do the rest?
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate you saying that. Margaret.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Well, I just think it's pretty irresponsible to consider a budget that is such a great deficit. It just concerns me that we're putting together a request, that puts out taking from our savings basically to meet our budget. And I don't feel like it's a wise business move to do this. So just my concerns are that it's too huge a deficit to work with. That's it.
Michael.
Thanks, Maggie. I'm just addressing something that Don said earlier about how these payments will be made. And this obviously has nothing to do with whether we're going to approve the budget, whether the assessments are right. I'm thinking about the mechanics and the angst that many parishes are having over the potential of making 2 payments in the month of January. I would suggest that rather than doing that on a parish by parish basis, that we say that as of the end, and again, this is assuming this budget is approved and the assessment is approved, whatever comes out of this, that we put a full stop to the way we've been calculating assessments as of the end of this year. We do what we normally do, is pay that in January to the diocese. And starting in February, from a cash point of view, the diocese starts receiving the assessment. So that this way there is no parish who is making 2 payments in the month of January, rather than having to come to you. Every one of us will have this problem, having to make 2 payments in the month of January. Just making it such that it carries forward starting at the beginning of the year, that the payments that are due in January will be made in February. I realize it's not a big deal, but for most every parish, I would think that it would be almost impossible to make 2 payments in January, no matter what we decide here, if we're going from a calculation to an assessment. I just propose that as an operative for everyone, rather than having every individual parish come to you and say, we'd like to make our January assessment payment in February. We'd like to make our February assessment payment in March. Let's just say that we're going to have those payments made in the subsequent month, so that cash flow isn't negatively affected from the outset.
Don, how would that impact our accounting?
Well, that, of course, from an accounting point of view, that will change the income for 2021. Because we're not going to count that as income, even though it gets paid in January.
Don, this is a question that I asked you last week, and that is, you said that you keep the books open in January for asking to be paid in December, and you don't close the books of the diocese until you know what the asking will be, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to say, I'm going to accrue for in December for the asking under the old formula, just take us.
Yeah,
the
but
old formula from Grace in the Desert.
Yeah, let me stop.
Let me finish. The old formula from Grace in the Desert at 23% will be paid in January, and you're going to accrue for that in December. In January, you would accrue 1/12 of the assessment amount due from Grace in the Desert, and expect to receive that in February. So your books will still be matching.
No, yes, I could do that, but that means the cash flow for the year 22, of course, will be 11/12 of what we're projecting in this budget. I agree with what you're saying. So it will mean, no, I'll stop with that statement. Yeah.
And again, it'll mean that the cash flow from 2021 will be less than what you were anticipating in 2021 as you budgeted, because you're not receiving it until January.
I got to also remind all of you that when I looked at the various asking reports, there are so many different ways that the parishes have been calculating their revenue subject to asking, that it was not fair to continue that system. And that this assessment is a much more equitable, although it's creating some short-term problems. And I think we can resolve them on a one-to-one basis. Now, obviously, if we had a treasurer, it would help, that the treasurer could work with your treasurers. I can't travel around the state to do that. I'm happy to do it online or by telephone.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for your understanding.
Next is Kathy Klein.
Well, it seems that we're really only discussing income, and maybe that's what we should be talking about right now. But I'm wondering if what we really need to address, even though the standing committee has worked so hard on it, is a reduction in expenses. And may I speak to two things regards to that, or is this not the time?
I think we are, I mean, you're welcome to.
Well, you know, everything is going to be painful. I have been an adult chaperone to an EYE event, and so I don't know if the 18,000 is just covering for a couple adults, or if that's underwriting, you know, a large part of the delegation. But generally speaking, people are good about raising money and contributing to youth. And is there a way to reduce that a bit and do some fundraising to send youth to EYE? Because there's 18,000 right there, which is not much. I remember you at one time saying the standing committee was having to face the harsh reality that we couldn't afford 2 full-time canons. Given that canon to the ordinary was not originally a full-time for the next year, but yet understanding that it was needed to support the new bishop, and certainly I don't regard the new bishop as expendable. The bishop, I can't wait to have, bishop can't get here soon enough for me. But is there a way to taper down the canon of the ordinary? Keep, you know, have it be a full time for the first quarter or whatever, but taper it down, given that you don't see the future as having 2 full-time people anyway, and because that's a significant expense for the diocese.
Okay, two questions. I hear your 2 questions. First, about the youth budget. Ken, you can go ahead and lower your hand because I was not going to. I was going to call on you for this one. So Ken, why don't you go ahead and address that one, and then I will come back and address the second part of your question.
I will say for the youth portion of the budget, you are correct with the EYE portion. However, this is not an EYE year, and that's what I kind of talked with when we're putting this forward. It's not for Episcopal youth, but what happened in the past and what has happened in the past in this diocese is we said, well, every 3 years we'll pull this in and we'll put up for EYE. Well, we can't do that. We need to put things in, and we're going to be having things that happen in our diocese throughout this whole year. And as when I went to the standing committee to ask for these funds, one of the things that I did tell them is that we brought this back from what we've done in the past, but that 18,000 that you're talking about, the majority of that money was always taken care of from parishes and so forth. We needed to put a blind budget because we need to explain this is what things cost. So the money comes into the parish. We do raise funds. We help take care of the chaperones are fully funded because they take their time, but that is not just for EYE. And the money that's there, it's there for, that's what we're looking at. That's what's going to cost us. However, I do not believe that the diocese will not have those funded. That's not, there will be funds that come to supplant those. Does that make sense?
Well, it certainly helps that it's not just EYE, but
No, it's not EYE. It's, we're looking at various youth retreats that will be put together. In the past, we've done things such as tech. There are search. There is Vocari. There's Right 13. There's a lot of things that are happening that we've had done in the past that we're trying to re-implement. And those do cost money, and because kids don't have it, but a lot of times that comes from the parish. And so that line item was more of saying, this is what it's going to cost us to do these things. So that's the portion of what that is.
thank you.
Does that
And
help?
by the way, yeah, I'm not, I went to EYE as an adult, and it was a mountaintop experience for me, and I've done youth ministry. I wasn't trying to bash any of that.
No, I didn't take that. I was trying to explain your answer.
Sure, yeah, no, I appreciate it. Okay, how about Maggie, the second part? And I apologize for having to bring up a personnel issue, but.
Oh, we're talking about the budget. That's how this goes. So to answer that question, we have decided with having conversations among staff and with Bishop-elect Elizabeth Gardner, that the best course of action is to have Canon Catherine be here to help with the transition, and then that will give Bishop Elizabeth at that point, the opportunity to do an in-depth assessment of the needs of the diocese and the needs and how much time is needed in the canon to the ordinary role. So here's the other part of that question. It is written into Canon Catherine's letter of agreement that she has a terminal sabbatical that is paid. So even if she stopped working, let's say in, let's say September, she still has 2 months of pay after that. So even if we tapered off her position, it doesn't change that part of it. So it wouldn't have a large enough, it would have a slight impact, but not as large of an impact as I think you're thinking. But like I said, we're basically waiting for Bishop-elect Gardner to get here and make that assessment to see if a tapering off of that position can happen. But as of right now, we're not, we as standing committee can't make that determination.
Well, my hat's off to all of you because we're just getting a taste of what you've probably been hearing. My heart just sort of breaks hearing some of the stories and the hardships and concerns. And I just feel like, somehow we've still got to try to address the very real concerns people have about income.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn.
I went to a Catholic girls boarding school for high school. And as finals approached every semester, the Mother Superior would gather us and remind us that we couldn't just put our books and notes under our pillow and sleep on them, that we actually had to study if we expected to pass our exams. I feel that this is a budget that we don't have a lot of room to move in. I support the bishop, I support the canon, the staff has to be there. What we're lost in the weeds, we need to look to the future. We need to look to outside sources of income. We need to look to fundraising. We need to look towards more global stewardship education. And at this point, I commit myself to the future of this diocese, that the Spirit will lead us, and those who have experience in fundraising and want to look to the future to try to solve this deficit with outside income, not cutting where we are. I'm just asking that we join together to support that mission for this diocese to move us into the future and to become the diocese we need to be. So.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Father Raphael.
Yes, once again, I think that we all have to understand that this is a budget that definitely we are submitting for approval with a deficit of about $200,000. That, as Margaret says, sometimes looks irresponsible. And like I also support what Michael Jakira was saying. We need to also listen each one of the parishes, because it's not that we don't want to approve the budget, it's the reality that we are experiencing and we have experienced since the pandemic. And one of the factors also that we have to take in consideration is that the pandemic is not over. We are still experiencing a low attendance and dealing with incomes. Some of the parishes, like All Saints, we cannot afford a rector. We cannot afford some salaries. We have sacrificed in the last year in order to survive. So I think that it's the diocese and the standing committee have to listen each one of the parishes, because it's not that we don't want to approve a budget. We don't want to approve an increase of salaries and expenses related with the salaries, but it's the reality that we are expressing. We are still in the middle of the pandemic. We are trying to survive. We are sacrificing in each parish without rectors, without people that we cannot afford. And I think this has to be a collaboration between the diocese and the parishes, sacrificing one another. And if it's also time to the diocese to sacrifice as well, I think we have to do it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Raphael. Kirk.
Deep breath.
I think that if we like the budget or not, the way we're moving, the way we have to move forward is the same. The parishes are going to pay what they can. And even if it's not close to what is projected in this budget. And then the standing committee has to make decisions. And so that's what's going to happen no matter what. Parishes are going to pay what we can in good faith, the best we can. And then the standing committee is going to see what those numbers really are. And then they have to do the hard work. And that hard work may mean we lose a canon. We have two. We may lose a canon because is personnel in all our places. That's our biggest expense, right? And so, but that's a prayerful decision that the standing committee is going to have to make. Or the prayerful decision is we keep pulling money from our savings. But that's why we have a standing committee. And we should pray for them and pray for our bishop-elect because this is a tense time for everybody. We need to continue to support each other in this. But, do I want to necessarily approve this budget? No, but I'm going to. Because the outcome will be the same. We're going to give what we can. And then the standing committee is going to have to make hard decisions. And they're going to need our prayer to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Thanks. Okay. I don't see any more raised hands. All right, I don't see any more raised hands, friends. I think it might be time to vote on this budget. Elizabeth, are you ready with a poll?
I am. If you're ready, I'll start it.
All right, let's do it. Please go ahead and respond to the poll on your screen. All right, Elizabeth, can you announce the result?
One second. Because hosts and a few other people can't vote directly, I need to make a slight adjustment. We have 88 votes in favor of the budget and 25 votes opposed.
Okay, so the budget passes. Thank you all. And as I said, this conversation continues. So please reach out if there are problems. We will get through this together. We're gonna figure it out. And God willing, our budget process will be more streamlined next year, and the conversations will happen throughout the year to make it a little bit less clunky next year. Kirk, you raised your hand.
Yeah, and coming from a diocese prior that did this sort of assessment, our treasurers really had to plan ahead. And so that's something that I encourage the treasurers to do now. And though if whatever we're paying now, whatever the end of the year, we have to say, oh, it is a good year. We have to actually stash money away to be able to pay the assessment if it's the next year or 2 years later, whatever the calculation is. And so it works. I mean, that's why most dioceses do something similar. The first year is the hardest. And so we just really, and our treasurers will need some guidance. I just know on how to best do that to prepare for future years so that we're not in this kind of pain every year. It's just that the first is the worst. So, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. The final item of business on our agenda is to announce the date and time and place of the next two diocesan conventions. The 52nd annual convention, which is next year, will be held from October 6th through the 8th of 2022 at Harvey's in State Line, Nevada. Super excited about that. Really, really ready to be back up at Tahoe. And the 53rd annual convention will be held at the Bristlecone Events Center in Ely, Nevada. We will make it to Ely. We promise we'll make it there. I will further add that it is a state goal of the diocesan office to hold the 2024 convention in Southern Nevada. So we'll do Tahoe, Ely, and then we'll come back south. Okay. Bishop Jim, I now call upon you for a closing prayer, please. Bishop Jim, did we lose you along the way somewhere? Let me see. Nope, Jim, you're there. I see you. I can't see your face, but I can see that you are there. You need to unmute if you're trying to speak with us.
There we go. How's that?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you for your good work, for your leadership, and thank everybody for the prayerful, sensitive, and honest conversation. It will pay off and for the whole diocese. So if you're ready for the prayer, which is what you said, we'll do it. Okay. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. I pray, O God, that your peace may be with us and those we serve. And may the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be with us now and this diocese throughout the transitions that come. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. And I now adjourn the 51st annual convention of the Diocese of Nevada at 12:52 and close the agenda. I look forward to seeing you all. And I am so excited to see you all when we consecrate our new bishop here in Las Vegas, and see you all again in person in October at Lake Tahoe, God willing.
Thank you for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you all. See you very soon. See you in March.